Senator Rafferty, we are live.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Maine State Legislature's 130th legislature. We are in work session and meeting this morning with the Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. My name is Joe Rafferty. I am the Senate Chair representing Senate District 34. In a moment, I will give our committee members an opportunity to say hello. It is a work session this morning, which means we'll be working some bills that were introduced prior dates. Members will be entering and exiting our meeting as it's going on, as they may have to testify or speak in other committees. Also, for those of you that are in as a part of the audience or listening and are tied to a specific bill, as there is a potential transition, if we ask you to join us, there's a lapse in that transition period that our clerk, Eli Murphy, will work you through. So thank you for your patience with that. That said, I'm going to ask committee members to introduce themselves, and I will start with our Senator Woodson, please. Good morning. I'm not hearing.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Dave Woodson, Senate District 33, York County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Representative Crockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. First, I'll apologize. I've been having very bad internet connections this morning, so hopefully you don't lose me. But I'm Ed Crockett from District 43, which is part of Portland and part of Falmouth.
Thank you, sir. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Jan Dodge, House District 97, Belfast, Northport, and Waldo. And since this is the Education Committee, let's celebrate math this morning with Happy Pi Day 3/14.
Thank you. Representative Lyman.
Good morning, Sheila Lyman, District 74, which is J, Livermore Falls and part of Livermore. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McCray.
Yes, good morning. Thank you. I'm Dave McCray, coming to you from the Great White North. It's almost impossible to believe, looking out my window, that spring is a week away. I represent District 148 and I'm in Port Fairfield. Good morning.
Good morning. Representative Millette.
Good morning, I'm Rebecca Millette. I represent House District 30, which is most of Cape Elizabeth.
Thank you. Representative Roach.
Good morning, everyone. Representative Tim Roach, District 7, Wells.
Thank you, sir. Representative Salisbury.
Good morning, I'm Sue Salisbury and I represent House District 35, which is part of Westbrook.
Thank you. Representative Stearns.
Good morning. My name is Paul Stearns. I represent House District 119 in Piscataquis County.
Thank you very much. And also, I mentioned, I'll introduce him again, our committee clerk, Eli Murphy. Morning, Eli. And our committee analyst, who we will count on this morning, as always, to help us work through a lot of the details and understanding the impacts that various bills has. And that's our OPLA analyst, Hillary Rizla. Good morning, Hillary. And actually, at this time, we're going to go to you, Hillary, I believe. Yes, if you could get us current.
Sure, yes. So today we're going to continue the discussions on the supplemental budget, specifically those items that were tabled on Thursday and potentially a couple new items. Before I start digging into the tabled items, I just want to let you know, I did send everyone the template with all the votes recorded in it for those items that were voted. Obviously, you did not have a chance to review that before this morning's meeting. But if you do try to take a look before Wednesday, make sure it matches the notes that you have, that would be helpful. The other part of the report back that the committee will send back, in addition to that report back template, is a cover memo. And I just wanted to pull that up. I didn't send it out because there's not really much on it yet, but I do just want to start by pulling up that memo so the committee has a sense of what it looks like. And as we go through some of the items today and you think about where you might want to include something in the narrative portion of the report back, you have a sense of how that might look. So let me just do that very quickly. So here is the draft cover memo that will go to AFA. It mentions just simply that, we have met and we have worked the budget, and we'll attach the report back template. Here's an example, however, of a narrative that will be included in the report back memo. So one of the things that the committee had voted on Thursday was the language for Part Y. And so this is a place where there was a little bit more explanation that would be needed to explain why the committee did what it did. And so it reflects that the majority of the committee voted to support that particular language part, but to make an amendment, we'd include that amendment as an appendix. And then this would reflect that the minority of the committee voted in opposition to move that language out. So as we go through some of these items today, just think about that's how it's ultimately going to be reflected when we report back to AFA. Everything we vote today, I'll try to make sure it gets onto this memo before Wednesday, and then the committee will have a final chance to review that memo, make sure everyone's in agreement that that reflects your conversations, and then that report back will be on Friday at 9:30 with AFA. Unless there are any questions on that, I think it probably makes sense to just get started and perhaps start with the tabled initiative of the Maine Community College system. To reorient you to that, let's see. All right, so it is, the committee had tabled this last initiative of the Maine Community College system regarding free community college enrollment. The initiative provides funding for up to 2 years of the free community college for all high school graduates in the classes of 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023 who enroll in a Maine community college full-time in the fall of 2022 or the fall of 2023. There were concerns raised on Thursday about whether this needs to be more needs-based, or perhaps whether there needs to be some change to the language regarding those students who only reside or establish residency in Maine. Currently, the way this language and the corresponding language in Part 00 reads is that this is a last dollar scholarship that would support tuition and mandatory fees for graduates of those high school classes who enroll full-time, earning 30 credits per year, pursue an associate degree or one-year certificate, qualify for in-state tuition, or commit to living and working in Maine, accept all federal and state grants, scholarships, and any other funding sources. So I would open that back up for discussion.
Senator Woodson, please.
Yes, thank you. I was the one that tabled it. I had concerns, which Hillary has just gone over. And I had a long discussion with President Daigle, and I am satisfied with my concerns. That the one thing that I think it needs maybe a language change is that that out-of-state students have to have residency within Maine. But I'd be interested in hearing what President Daigle has to say on that. Or others.
Thank you. Any other questions? And while we're taking is President Dagler in the audience, Eli? I do see a question from Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along those same lines, and I know we're oftentimes in an initiative like this that's come in fairly quickly, very quickly. The devil's in the details. I would be much more favorable toward this if there were built into the distribution of the funds some type of assurances. In other words, what I'm getting at is oftentimes scholarships will come forward, different financial opportunities for students, and they have to demonstrate, one, that they're a student in full standing. And in this particular one, post-graduation, we're looking for these students to assure that they're going to live and work in the state of Maine. So kind of following up on Senator Woodsum's piece, regarding Maine residency, establishing residency if you are currently an out-of-state high school student looking to attend community college in Maine. I think that's a good idea. And I'm wondering if it's not too late, or if we could have built in those assurances that the monies don't go out unless that in that fulfillment of that responsibility on the student part to stay in the state of Maine, working in the state of Maine is fulfilled. I probably didn't say that quite as eloquently as others might have, but I think you get my drift.
So I think I do, sir, but I'm just, as I'm trying to manage it in my head. So in reality, would your proposal, I'm asking this just for clarification, would your proposal require that the student fronts the money and then they would reimbursed down the road once they've proved that they are living and working here?
To be honest, Senator, I haven't thought that far through the thing, and I think that for the student to have to front the money, I think would circle all the way back to the existing problem that many of these youngsters don't have the money in the first place to do that. So again, I haven't thought through the financial mechanism, but theoretically in my head, I'm thinking just some kind of check and balance along the way, that if the student bails on that obligation, the community college system isn't left holding the bag, and the monies are gone, and so is the student. And again, I apologize. I haven't thought that far through the thing. Maybe there's a mechanism to do that, and perhaps there is not.
Thank you. I know we have a couple of questions. Eli, have your hand up?
I just wanted to mention President Dagler is here and is presumably ready to answer both Senator Woodsum's question as well as the further questions.
Thank you. And I see all hands have gone down. So President Dagler, thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thank you. First, good morning. I hope you all had a good weekend. A better weekend than Hillary had, because I think she was working all weekend. So to answer both Senator Woodsum and basically the questions on the table, we would support an amendment and actually have already built this into our plans and the literature that we're preparing, a residency requirement so that the students establish residency in Maine. When they establish residency, they're going to school on campus. They may take some online courses, but they also frequently work, and that develops the relationship. We can have a clawback mechanism, but that gets a little bit awkward. I do think that the notion of the student prepaying and then being reimbursed does create the same problem that we currently have. So I don't really think, Representative Stearns, that particular problem would work. We want to be able to say it's free. We want to be able to get the students engaged. and get them moving forward. But we can make sure that they're making, in fact, it would be required that they make fair academic, that continue to make academic progress and establish residency in Maine. And then build working relationships in Maine while they're here.
Thank you, sir. Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And President Degler, do you see this as opening a door to further discussions regarding particularly the early college initiatives and looking at CTE training in general across the K-12 realm? And where I'm coming from is, in my opinion, we do a great disservice to young folks when we require them to wait for their junior year in high school. They select perhaps a trade that they're interested in or a skill set, and then we send them off to school half-time for every other day, if you will, or half-time to pursue those initiatives. I believe there's room, if we were to move forward with an initiative such as this, there's room for that, a lot of that training to take place earlier in that student's life, perhaps not requiring the full 2-year free, use that word, the 2-year experience at the community college. Does that?
So I do. I think your question goes beyond the scope of the Free College Initiative, but do know that we're working aggressively in early college initiatives, especially with the CTEs. I'm actually on an advisory council for one CTE that's looking at trying to adopt a 4-year model, and that those conversations are active and moving forward. In fairness, I think that what we would be doing here, that would go beyond the scope of this particular bill. But to your point, it definitely puts those conversations on the table. One other point that I'll make, actually, to your earlier point, is that there is also built into this a reporting requirement so that you'll have regular information about how many students have taken it, what the residency looks like, and all of that information, so that you're well informed as the program progresses.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Lyman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for President Degler. You mentioned about continuing, one of the stipulations besides residing in Maine was to continue to make academic progress. Could you expand on that a little bit and what you're referring to?
So the student has to be on a path to graduation. So they have to pass their courses. We have said that if a student fails a particular course but continues, maintains a C average, that we would not bill back for that course. But going forward, that the Free College Initiative is really aimed to get them to graduation. So the students have to maintain a path to graduation.
So it's like a pass-fail measure on the courses.
Yes.
Thank you.
Senator Woodson, please.
When the discussion is ended, Joe, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, sir. Folks, any other questions? Senator, I think this is a time for a motion.
Okay, thank you. I make a motion ought to pass with the amended language of the residency requirements, which I think Hillary understands.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second that.
Thank you. Further discussion, Representative Crockett. Do you have a question?
No, I was just going to second the motion.
Thank you. It's a little slower on the phone, I guess.
It is. Yeah. I'm
Hillary,
not sure I could face Representative McCray anyway.
So I just wanted to provide just a touch of clarity. So my understanding of the motion would be to move this particular initiative into the budget with the amendment to the Part 00 language, which would reflect this need for the residency requirement to be eligible. And I will draft that up for the committee to review finally on Wednesday.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Any further discussion? Folks, if I could get a show of hands, all those in favor, raise your hand, try to get them into camera view. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I can't see Representative Crockett or Representative Salisbury. So it's unanimous with those I can see, Eli. I cannot see Representative Crockett or Representative Salisbury. So it would be
My video is on, it says.
okay. What I see, sir, on your end is I see you, but you're frozen. So this.
Oh. Some people may like that.
Because this is just really a straw poll, if Representative Crockett wants to acknowledge vocally that he is in support, that's good enough for my purposes.
I thank you, Hillary. I am in support.
And Representative Salisbury.
Yes, if I can just acknowledge that I am in support as well.
We got it. Thank you very much. So it is unanimous by all present. Thank you, folks. Thank you, President Degler.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so the next portion of the supplemental budget is going to be all with the Department of Education. And I think it probably makes sense if the chairs are okay, if we could move in, let's see who I need here. Joanne Allen and Nicole Dennis, as well as Aaron Fraser, who may be able to address some of the questions that came up on the tabled items.
Thank you.
The first tabled item is going to be on page 30 of your report back template. And this is under reference number 348. And this is the initiative that provides funding to support preschool programs and school administrative units. These funds do not lapse, but must be carried forward to the next fiscal year to be used for the same purpose. And this had been tabled for a little bit more information about how this relates to CDS, which is why we asked Aaron Fraser to join us this morning from the department to provide a little bit more information on this initiative.
Thank you, Ms. Fraser, for joining us. And appreciate it. So if you have anything you can add relative to the reference number was 348. I'm not sure if you have what we have. The document is, it would be page 30.
I don't have the document in front of me, but I do know what I'm speaking about today. Good morning, Senator Rafferty and esteemed members of the committee. I just wanted to give some clarification for the additional funding we have requested for preschool programming. The funding would be to support staff to work in our preschool programs and to increase staff classrooms. The reason why we have to do this independent of whatever else happens with CDS is because, as you all know, during our presentation, there is unmet need, and per federal law, we can't have unmet need. We also have a federal audit coming. They have not been in Maine. OSEP has not been in Maine for 10 years. They're coming because of a new differentiated monitoring system that we're preparing for. They're coming this fall. So we are under federal audit for Part C and Part B, and it's a new auditing process per OSEP. And we have to take an aggressive approach to reducing this. The fact that we don't have enough services in Part B 619, because we simply can't not provide the service. By law, we are required to.
Thank you very much. I have a question from Representative Millet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. I'm reading from the budget document, and it says that it provides funding for grants to SAUs to supplement subsidy, preschool grants, and other preschool funding sources to support placement in the least restrictive environment. So there's a lot packed into that. From what you just described, I would hesitate to, well, no, I guess I would say that this is not actually for grants to SAUs, that this is actually supporting salaries for the staff that are in these new CDS preschool programs. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. The SAUs we are paying SAUs to provide these services. So this grant money, this money is going to be supporting SAUs in helping us provide these services through these classrooms. In combination, we are doing this in collaboration with SAUs. So if they are thinking of expanding their preschool programming, this money is for helping us do that.
So
CDS will still be funding it.
So FAPE for these children have been transferred to the SAUs?
No, they haven't. But as you know, there's been an increase in the collaboration between SAUs and CDS and are trying to increase the service provision across the state. So we have several SAUs at this point who we're paying to provide these services.
Okay, so this money is going to be used for programs preschool programs that CDS is establishing, as well as paying SAUs to provide these services.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Woodson, please.
Thank you. So, Ms. Frazier, what you're saying is there's going to be additional monies available to provide for the salaries and classroom needs, services, etc. And if these are not implemented, if this is not implemented, I think I got this right, is that, the federal government's going to be auditing the procedures that Maine is doing. And we probably would get slammed with a pretty good assessment, would we not, if we don't meet these needs?
That's true. And we will definitely have a finding in this area. And what we don't want to do is be in a position where we would have to relinquish any other federal funds that we're getting. So we want to be in a great position to have the needs met.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ms. Frazier. Any additional questions, folks, relative to reference 348? Well, we have Ms. Frazier with us. Seeing none. Anyone like to make a motion? This is currently tabled, been tabled.
I'll make a motion to move it in.
Thank you. So Senator Woodson makes reference number 348 be moved into the budget. Do I have a second?
I would second that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Dodge. Any further discussion? All those in favor, if you would be kind enough to hold your hand up, try to get it into your screen as best we can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then verbal, Representative Salisbury.
Yes, I approve moving that in.
Thank you. Representative Crockett.
I approve as well.
Thank you. So it is unanimous by all those in attendance. And thank you, folks, for that.
All right, so it looks like next, I actually want to move, before we go into part C, move to part W, which is on page 52. I have to admit, this was one that I thought we had done, but then I didn't have any notes on, and so I realized I needed to circle back to. This is, I'll pull it up on my screen. This is the language part, which would, excuse me, there we go. Make changes to several positions in the Department of Education. The name of Director of Legislative Affairs is changed to Director of Policy and Government Affairs. Chief Innovation Officer is removed from major policy influencing positions, and the Associate Commissioner of Policy and Programs and the Associate Commissioner of Public Education are added as major policy influencing positions. And the Chief Innovation Officer and Chief of Staff and Operations are removed. Positions appointed by the Commissioner and the Associate Commissioner of Policy and Programs and Associate Commissioner of Public Education are added as appointed positions.
Any questions relative to section or part W? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move it in.
Thank you, Senator Woodson, seconded by Representative Dodge. Thank
Would
you.
second that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please, if you would, hands up. I see it's approved by all those that I can see, and Representative Crockett.
Yes.
Thank you. Representative Salisbury.
I approve moving it in.
Thank you. It is unanimous by all in attendance.
Okay, so next, I think it makes sense to move on to part C. This is the part of the budget that establishes the total cost of education from kindergarten to grade 12, the state contribution, and the mill expectation for the local contribution for fiscal year 2022-23. It enacts the annual budgetary hardship adjustment for school administrative units experiencing an increase in students requiring English learner services. It amends the National Board Salary Supplement and Scholarship Fund language to include teachers employed by education service centers, provides one-year adjustments to the essential programs and services funding model to address student loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and provides funding for career and technical education schools to expand or develop early childhood education programs. I did ask that Joanne Allen and Phil Dennis from the department be available for questions as it relates to Part C. And they also submitted to this committee an updated question answer document. And so I'm sure they could go through that for the committee as well, if that would be helpful.
Anyone have any question or feel a need to hear from those folks? Having no questions, Representative Millette, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have questions about this section for sure. So I would go to section C5, which is on page 43. I'm wondering where this funding would come from, where that is in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eli, if you could transition, would Ms. Allen be the best to answer that? Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Joanne Allen. I'm the Director of School Finance for the Department of Education. The initiative that Representative Millette has asked us about is on the purple sheet of GPA, but it's also in Part C as a separate line, which corresponds again to the purple sheet. So if it would be part of the same allocation area as the CTE budget for 9 to 12 students, enhancing student performance and opportunity. And we've inserted a separate line there, which will go into section 15688A. It will be a new subsection in that statutory language. Does that help, Representative?
That's $100,000 that's been allocated to this?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing none, yes, Representative Millette.
Okay, I stopped falling around my room. Yeah, we have had this conversation before around the budget. Ms. Allen is going to recognize this. For the life of me, I cannot bear that we are increasing our OIT budget by $2 million again. And I just, please help me understand how we could be paying $2 million more in 1 year for OIT.
I am happy to help you understand that to the best of my ability. So I want to be clear. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to look at the Q&A document that we completed based on some of your earlier questions in the committee, but we mistakenly referenced in that document that the $2 million is all attributable to Maine IT, which is the agency that's part of administration and finance. That's not quite true. So a lot of the work that Maine IT does for our data collection systems, specifically our NEO system, which creates the 279s and collects other data for the department, is staffed by contracted services. And in order to fully staff those teams, we use delivery orders to get contracted personnel. If we need to do some special projects for the NEO system, which we have 2 coming next year, we would need to create what's called feature teams. So we would need to staff up for a temporary team to do those special projects. One of the projects will be a feature team for the EPS model in the 279. A lot of what populates the 279 is done manually by the school finance team. That's not the most efficient, nor is it the most accurate way to do things. So we want to get those calculations automated. That's, I'm speaking specifically to the special ed model, the CTE model. Those are mini EPS formulas, if you will, inside the big formula. And I don't think that the best use of the team's time is doing that manually. So there's that. We also need to link up to the data warehouse project. We need to link the subsidy calculations and all those data points into the data warehouse. That's the project that's funded by a federal grant. That federal grant goes to the software for that warehouse. So we also need a team to link the NEO system for EPS to the data warehouse. So those 2 feature teams are fairly expensive. They're almost $500,000 each. So there's half of the increase right there. Some other things that we have, we needed to, we have a data collection system called MEFS, Maine Education Finance System, for the EPS fiscal data. So that's in addition to the student system and the staff system. So we had to have some specialized reports done there, one to satisfy the audit and some other custom report work for analysis by the school finance team. Another allocation that is in there, and you asked about this, Representative, in another question that you had around regionalization. In this allocation that you're looking at on this line are the funds for the student information system support to all the members of the regional service centers. So that is in there as well. So those are some of the highlights, I guess, of why that is increasing. So it's not necessarily a direct increase to Maine IT, that agency, but it is for IT work related to EPS. Help? Too much? Need more?
Helpful, but I mean, we've been seeing huge increases every year. And so I guess my hope would be that next year we don't see another $2 million increase, because these sound like one-off projects.
Yes, they are.
Right?
Correct.
So, I mean, literally, we have seen like a 50% increase in OIT since 2018. And it's a huge chunk of money, and it's important work, but after a while, especially when you see something like this in a 1-year jump, it's eye-catching. So I appreciate you walking us through. I will step off my soapbox on OIT, and definitely appreciate you walking us through that.
Perhaps you and I could talk off mic sometime about it.
Thank you both. Any further discussions, folks? Okay, I would be happy to entertain a motion here, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. I try to give space for somebody else. So nobody else has any questions. I'm just going to keep posing my questions. On page 47, there is the National Board Certification Salary Supplement of 307,551. I'm just double checking to make sure that what we passed last year in the biennial, in combination with this, we are fully funding National Board Certified Salary Supplements, correct? I see Joanne nodding her head. Awesome.
You are correct. We successfully issued the checks. Where are we? We're in March, so those had to go out late January, early February. Those have been successfully issued. No shortfall.
Okay, I do think that's it for me. In terms of questions about what's in the language, I know I have two. Well, one, Ms. Risler, you're going to have to help me understand if we would change Part C language, or we would have a separate new section for language in terms of the National Board Certified calculation. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Woodson.
Just a comment and to thank Representative Willett for bringing that up. That's a very important point, and well done, Department of Education.
Thank you, sir. Folks, any further questions of any? Seeing none, then I would.
I'm so sorry, but I just need confirmation from Ms. Risler that we wouldn't amend Part C on the salary supplement.
So I don't have a specific answer for you right now. I think to the extent the committee wants to put in a new initiative, because we're going to be writing it in narrative, whether it ends up in Part C specifically or ends up separately we don't need to figure that out this second, if that makes sense. But to the extent we just want to vote Part C as it is, and then we'll talk new initiatives. And that's really more of a drafting question that we can deal with down the road.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your patience.
Sure. Senator Woodson.
Yeah, are you ready for a motion?
Yes, sir.
I would move it. We move this in.
So Senator Woodson moves that we include Part C in the budget. Do I have a second? Representative Dodge, thank you for your second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please, if you would be kind enough to raise your hand, hold them up for a moment. Thank you. And I need a confirmation. Representative Crockett,
Yes.
and Representative Salisbury, please.
I approve moving that in.
Thank you. It is Representative Roach. Thank you. And we have, it is yes from all those participants with us today. Unanimous. Thank you. Hey, Hillary.
All right, so that concludes the items that I had listed as tabled. So outstanding are the two items that Representative Millett had mentioned at the end of Thursday. The first being the biennial budget language that was proposed last year. And I did send that out this morning, and I do look to Representative Millett to confirm that that's what she was hoping I would send out. Here is the attachment that was included as part of the biennial last year. So this language would have made the following changes. So it would have required that the fees collected that go towards the paying for the salary supplement, if they're insufficient to fully fund the salary supplement, then general purpose aid would be used to cover the balance. And it provides that the commissioner shall pay annual salary supplement payments to school administrative units or publicly supported secondary school for payment to school teachers who have attained certification from the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards or its successor organization pursuant to those sections of law.
Thank you. Any questions there? All right. Do we need to approve that, Hillary?
So this is one of the things that if the committee would like to recommend making this change, we would reflect it in the report back memo as a potential new initiative and would include that language updated for this year. I'll clean it up a bit. This is the one I just grabbed from last year, but in essence, the language would be the same.
Is there anyone opposed to those, that language? Representative Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we need to just have a motion to move in this language as a new initiative, and that would be my motion.
Okay, I didn't hear it that way, but thank you very much. I'll take that as a motion to move it in. Do I have a second?
Yes, sir, you do.
Thank you, Representative Dodge. All those in favor of the language? 1, 2, 3, hands are up. Any opposed? Seeing none, I need a verbal, please. Confirmation, Representative Salisbury.
I approve moving that in.
Thank you, and Representative Crockett.
I approve moving in as well.
Thank you, and Representative Roach. I'm not hearing anything. He may be back. So it is unanimous by all those in attendance. Thank you.
All right, the next potential new initiative that was raised on Thursday had to do with the school lunch applications. And I touched on it briefly on Thursday, but let me just pull up. All right, so this was LD 961 from last year. And during the work session on that bill, and I'm going to just share my screen, there was a proposed amendment to this bill. And it has to do with the internet-based school meal applications. And the proposed amendment indicated that the application has to be on the department's publicly accessible website. The department shall endeavor to provide the application in various languages reflecting the student population of public schools, which was changed a little bit in the final version. That the data submitted through the application may not be visible to the department and must be transmitted directly to the applicable public school, and that all public schools must accept the data submitted through the internet-based application. LD 961, as it was enacted as a public law, provides that it's available on the public accessible website, that the department shall make the internet-based application in an understandable and uniform format, to the maximum extent practicable, in a language that parents and legal guardians can understand, that all public schools shall continue to distribute the paper applications, and that data submitted through the internet-based application may not be visible to the department and must be transmitted directly to the applicable public school. But as you can see, that final sentence regarding, there we go, that all public schools must accept the data through the internet-based application was not included in the final language. And so this would be a question of whether you want to include that as a new initiative to put that back into that section of law.
Hillary, right before that, in that same section, a couple of lines above the red ink, there is a sentence that states that a school may make the online application, but it sounds like the department is directing that they shall. Am I reading that wrong?
I'm just trying to look at where you are looking.
It's about 4 or 5 lines above that red stripe.
Oh, sure. So let me pull that back up. So the department shall make available to public schools the internet-based application for free or reduced price meals developed under the section. And it says that a public school may make the internet-based application available for school meal applications on the public school's publicly accessible website. Whether the public school makes the internet-based application available on their publicly accessible website, this change would require that the schools accept data submitted through the internet-based application.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was an oversight in drafting, and I regretfully did not pick it up when we voted on it, when it came to our chambers. And the Full Plates, Full Potential folks came back to me and brought it to my attention. I had hoped to use another legislative vehicle to make this correction, but I'm concerned now that we may not have that vehicle to do it. So I'm hoping we can make this change in the budget. We did pass this bill out of committee 12-1. So I really do hope that I can continue to have everyone's support to get this enacted as we had voted on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yes, Representative Dodge.
When you're ready for a motion, Mr. Chair, I am ready.
I think I may have a question yet. Representative Stearns?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Millette might be able to refresh my memory on this, but as we had that language in, was there a discussion back at that time as to whether or not this would constitute a mandate upon the schools, and would they possibly incur further costs? I can't recall the discussion.
Because districts may choose to have the online application, it's not a mandate, because if they don't have the online application, then they don't have that online data.
Yep, very good. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you both. Representative Dodge, I'm ready for a motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do not have wording, but I would make a motion that we make this language correction going forward.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Representative McCray, thank you, sir. All those in favor, if you would be kind enough to hold your hand up high. Any in opposition? One. No. Okay, that's okay. So I see there's no opposition. I need a voice confirmation in favor or against Representative Salisbury.
I am in favor.
Thank you. Representative Crockett.
In favor.
Thank you. It is unanimous by all those present.
Thank you. All right, so that includes everything that I had listed as being tabled. I will work on drafting that memo so that you all have a chance to review it on Wednesday and make any corrections, or if there are any concerns or any errors. I'll make sure to reflect as well that all the votes that are reflected as unanimous were in fact unanimous of those present, because I do know some people are not here today or were not here on Thursday. And then once I draft that, if there are any questions or concerns, we can discuss it on Wednesday. And or I don't think I've missed anything, but I'll go over everything with a fine tooth comb. And for some reason I see we missed something, we'll raise that on Wednesday as well. If anyone has any questions or concerns that come up between now and then, just let me know and I'll make sure to flag it for the committee.
Thank you very much. Hillary, I believe if that is our work outside of the work sessions, can you give me a time reminder on LD 1632 and the interpreters? Was it 12:30?
Sure, yeah. So on LD 1632, we do have ASL interpreters going to be joining us. They are scheduled to start at 12:30. And Dr. Karen Hopkins from the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf will be joining us around then. It might be a little bit closer to 12:40.
So I have 10:40 now. We do have two LDs that we could approach. The first is LD 1989, and then we have LD 1727. So that said, I'd like to open a work session on LD 1989, which is an act to authorize School Administrative District Number 6 to lease a former administrative building for a term of not more than 20 years. And Hillary, if you would be kind enough to give us a little update or refresher on that.
Sure, yes. So this is LD 1989. And the committee had considered this bill, but decided to table it because you received some information the morning of the work session regarding some people from the school board, affected school board, who may not have been in support. And you had asked that Representative Carlo go back to that school board to have a vote on this proposal. I did forward the committee an email that Representative Carlo had sent me, providing that at its meeting, the MSAD 6 Board of Directors approved the enclosed resolution with 9 members in favor and 1 member opposed. So I do see Representative Carlo is with us as well. So I don't know if you want to hear from him or if you would like me to pull any of that up on my screen, just let me know.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Representative Carlo? Yes, Senator Woodson.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, my understanding of SAUs or SADs when they have property is that that used to be, say, town property, that they would first offer it to the town. And then the town can do whatever they want with it. I mean, sell it, lease it for $1, whatever. And maybe I need to be reminded on, was this process followed? And is this issue before us somewhat of going around the barn to get it done? I just don't know if legislation is needed for this.
Thank you. Representative Cowell, I guess, can you confirm for us why the legislation itself is needed?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Senator Woodson, for the question. Like I said during the public hearing, we offered it to the town, and well, I shouldn't say we, because I'm here as a legislator, but the school board offered it to the town in 2000, whenever we did offer it to the town, and they said that they did not want it. I don't remember exactly the year that was, but we did offer it to the town, or leasing it to the Historical Society, and the town did say that they had no interest in it, which is why we're leasing it to the.
Okay, but did the school board actually vote on this to do what you're trying to accomplish here?
The superintendent signed the lease.
Would not normally a school board be involved in that? I don't know. I don't know what the procedure is. Maybe somebody can help me out here.
I'm not familiar with, I'm not an attorney, so I'm not familiar with the law about that. What I will say is that the question of whether or not the school board voted to lease this property goes beyond the scope of this bill. During the public hearing, the reasons why agreement is beneficial and why the 4-year cap hinders the Historical Society's ability to fulfill its intended goal. So I don't know the specifics about the process of whether or not the school district can, I don't know how any of that works, frankly, but what I will say is that the former superintendent, the lease started under the former superintendent, and when our current superintendent took over, he signed the lease, and then something got lost in communication about this, and he realized one day that it needs to be a board discussion. And so he's been trying to transition to doing that. That's our internal process and how it's unfolding so far. But like I said, it goes beyond the scope of this bill.
Well, I guess, I mean, we're always hearing that local control, the school board has the final say in this. And I personally feel like you're stepping over that process. You're skipping that process. And maybe other people can chime in on this, but maybe I'm missing something here.
Representative Woodson, Senator Woodson, there are additional questions that may address that.
Okay.
And if not, then we'll come back to it, okay?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Representative Stearns, followed by Representative McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for Representative Carlo, if I might.
Yes.
Representative Carlo, has the Historical Society weighed in on whether or not they would, if offered, if they would take ownership of that property?
I can't speak to that. I will confirm that the president of the Historical Society, Jan Hill, is in the waiting room and willing to answer questions from committee members. I think, the goal is to find a way for the Historical Society to be able to obtain a longer lease. That's my goal. And that's a shared goal among school administrators, school board members, local legislators, and the society too. Whether or not they'd be willing to acquire the property, I can't speak to that. I don't know if they can with, the financial limitations that they have. But if I don't know if Jan is in the waiting room or not, but she could certainly speak to that.
Eli, what was the name? I'm sorry, Representative Carla, what was the name?
Jan Hill, and I see that she has been moved over.
Okay. Ms. Hill?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here with you this morning. I think I can clear up, at least answer one of the questions that was just asked. Back in 2013, and actually in the year prior in 2012, the school board did offer 100 Main Street building to the town, which did not want it. And this lease was drawn up by the facilities committee of the school board. And it was also taken to the school board at that time for final approval. So that's the first thing. I hope that answers your question. And let's see. We were interested in purchasing the building actually prior to the signing of the lease, but at that time we were told that it wasn't possible. We were investigating a condo sale, for instance, because the school board wished to retain the land. And the attorney at the time said that that wasn't possible because he felt that there would be too many legal entanglements down the road, perhaps. So the condo agreement was out, and that's why the lease was finally agreed upon. However, we have found that in order to apply for most grants, and indeed to get any kind of substantial donations from any donor, we have to have control of the building for a reasonable amount of time. And that's what this whole thing is about, is to try to encourage and make it possible for us to have more control of the building for an extended length of time so that we can continue to do the rehabilitation that we would like to do on the building. We've done a substantial amount already, and we'd like to continue. The building has been a great asset to the community. And I should say that at the time we signed the lease in 2000, well, it was in the period of 2012, actually signed in April of 2013. The other alternative was for the school district was to tear the building down. And the Historical Society really felt that not only was that a waste of taxpayer dollars to do that, which was a substantial amount of money to tear the building down, and also the building is included in a potential Maine Historic Preservation opinion that it is a contributing building to a potential National Historic Register district in Bar Mills. So we had great interest in preserving the building. Number one, we had great interest in as did the school district really, in making the building something that would be of benefit to both the communities of Boston and Hollis. And we have done that, and we've improved it greatly. And it is a great resource for the community. And I think there is general support, from what I was told anyway, at this past board meeting, for the Historical Society and all the wonderful work that we have done there on the building. So it's just trying to get through this rather binding limitation of time on our lease that seems to be standing in the way. And I should mention, we also, there was a letter that was sent in opposition, but I wanted to mention that we have a cooperative working relationship already with the school district, in that we have a kind of we have another historic school building, which we owned. We moved to the site in Buxton Center. And we have an arrangement with the school district where they purchased that one-room school for $1. And then we lease it from the school district for $1. And this gave the school district land enough to, can't remember exactly what their needs were. It helped the school district with their zoning for the new elementary school at Buxton Center. So that's been going on since 2004 or so. We have a renewable 10-year lease. It goes on for 10, I guess, until 99 years. So we have a cooperative working relationship with SAD 6. And we hope to continue that. And we hope to be creative so that we can allow these historic buildings to serve the community, the communities of Buxton and Hollis. I'm happy to answer any further questions that you may have.
Thank you. I have at least 3 currently. I have Representative McCray, followed by Senator Woodson and Representative Millette.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Senator Woodson brought up the local control thing.
I'm having problems hearing you. Just a minute.
Yeah.
No, that's me. That's my laptop that I almost have on top. Sorry. Anyway, it appears to me under the issue of local control is brought up by Senator Woodson.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I can't hear you.
Well, now that's my internet, I guess. I'll do the best I can.
Okay.
Is that any better? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Anyway, under the issue of local control, as was mentioned by Senator Woodson, it appears to me that we have 2 entities here. The Board of Directors of SAD 6 and the Historical Society. And I would like to ask Representative Carlo as well as Ms. Hill if they are in agreement, those 2 entities are in agreement with the bill that has been brought forth. And then after those answers, I have a follow-up question, if I may.
I believe, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Nathan.
Okay. Thank you, Representative McCray, for the question. Yes, but I would say both the Board of Directors and the Historical Society are in agreement with this piece of legislation. And I was happy to get that resolution through the board. I would not have submitted the bill if I had not felt that it had the support of the board, but now we have that on record. And of course, the Historical Society can speak for themselves, but having consulted with them throughout the process, I'm relatively certain that they are in favor of the bill.
And I would add that, yes, we are. The Historical Society is in support of it.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I may have my follow-up.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it appears to me whether this needs legislation or not, I think the local entities both be in agreement with this bill as it is presented. I think the easiest and most expedient way forward would be to pass this, to vote for this bill as presented. I realize that there are other things we can discuss, but if all parties are in agreement, the official parties, aside from anything else, I just think that it's the logical way to go is to pass this bill and be done. So I'm in favor of it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCray. I have Senator Woodson, followed by Representative Millette.
Yes, thank you. I'm not against the Historical Society getting this extension or long-term lease or whatever. I just don't understand the procedure. And why can't the Historical Society and the board come up with a written agreement that you can have this for 4 or 10 years or whatever, that you can get the grant. Why does the legislature have to be involved?
I'd like to answer that. It's state law. The state law is standing in the way at this point. It limits our term to 4 years. And so it automatically renews each year until the 4th year, in which then it is continued. But what happens is that it's supposed to automatically continue. But that does not meet the qualifications of grantors. They want people that they, or organizations to which they are funding large amounts of money, to have quote unquote control. And they see 4 years and they say that's really not long enough time. And that's what we're up against.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. I'm gonna, Hillary has her hand up, so I think she's something that's helpful to us at this time.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly just sort of remind everybody what this bill currently does. It is simply exempting MSAD 6 from this specific provision of law that's in Title 20A, and I'm going to just pull it up on my screen quickly. So this is in Title 20A, Section 4103, regarding the closing and disposition of public elementary and secondary school buildings. And what this bill does is exempt MSAD 6 and only MSAD 6 from this subsection 2 here, which regards lease use of proceeds. And it says, so that notwithstanding this provision here, and I would suggest the committee probably wants to amend to be more specific to paragraph A, but this is the law that she's talking about. Leases not to exceed 4 years may be entered and may be renewed at the end of any lease period. So I think the goal is to exempt MSAD 6 from this specific paragraph here regarding the length of time of the lease, so that they could enter into a lease that's longer than the 4 years under the law.
Thank you, Hillary. That answers a lot of questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we all knew that was coming, Hillary. Representative Millette, followed by Representative Stearns, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions, but just my personal viewpoint of this bill. This bill says may, it's not shall. So that, in my mind, still respects local control. We're not telling that community what to do. We're simply saying that if you want to do this, then you may, because we have given you an exception to state law. And so for me, I have no issues with that. I'm not interested in getting involved in the local intricacies of who did what, when, where, and how. That's for the community to figure out. I do recognize the challenges with the 4-year lease. And I think Representative Carlo, I'd be interested in talking with you about maybe taking a more systemic look about whether that's a reasonable cap for our communities. But for now, I see that there is value in providing flexibility for a community should they choose to exercise that flexibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This certainly has been an interesting bill, and in my opinion, there's no doubt whatsoever that the intentions are excellent, and that the working relationship has been excellent between the Historical Society and the school, from what I've been able to gain. And they've done the very best they could within the restrictions and the legal advice that they've been given to move this forward. However, as Hillary went over the other parts of that law, I think it might have been section C down below that said any work done has to be in the vein that the building will be returned to future use as a school. So there's much more to that law. And when I look back at the statute, I think it is there was a lot of wisdom put into that back when the thing was created. My opinion would be I would revisit that ownership piece. I know you had a legal opinion on it. I'd get both parties in the room and get an attorney that could, and a real estate expert that could draw that up, turn it over to the town for $1, have the town turn right next door and turn it over to the Historical Society for $1. And perhaps that can't be done. It seems like maybe you've already tried it. If this were totally permissive language, I'd be much more in favor of it. But in essence, if we were to approve this 20-year lease, it becomes restrictive language in that should a future school board 9 years from now say, boy, we've got to do something here. Well, you can't do anything because we've got a 20-year lease on that building. You've let, players change, times change, that kind of thing. So it's, even though it's permissive in the short run, it's restrictive in that should the school system move forward with this, you're locked into quite a time frame. So I'd be willing, again, I think I fall back, I'd be willing to support it, but at some point there has to be an out clause for both parties. And it doesn't have to be a 6-month out clause. It could be up to a 4-year out clause to give time for, or 3-year, but there has to be some mechanism that where that lease could be ended.
With the district.
So
Yes,
I guess that's where I weigh in.
Okay. Can I just make a comment on that?
Yes, if you'd like, Ms. Hill.
Well, that's, we already have that in our lease. There is a stipulation in our lease. And frankly, it doesn't work to, well, I guess it works to the advantage of both parties, and that I'm trying to find here where it says the clause, but there is definitely a stipulation in the lease that the school district or the tenant can withdraw from the lease, and then the building, they'd have to be out within the next, we'd have to be out within the next year, I think it is, from the time.
Ms.
But
Hill, if I
we
could,
don't plan to leave. So anyway.
I think Ms. Rizla may have an answer for us here to that
Okay,
situation.
thank you.
Potentially.
Sure. I just wanted to remind the committee of some of the discussion the committee had from sort of the public hearing on this bill and leading up to the last work session. And there were a couple of amendments that the committee had asked me to mention when I did the bill analysis on this bill. And so depending on how the committee wants to move forward, I would just remind the committee that there were some suggested amendments, that the property name needs to be updated, that the name of the district could be updated to match their certificate of organization, and that there may be potential language to address the termination of the contract, such as they may only enter into these leases if the lease provides that either party may terminate the lease by giving written notice of its termination of the lease to their party, and that upon such notice, the lease must terminate on the date specified in the lease. I would add to those 3 potential suggested amendments the additional one of narrowing the scope of the exception specifically to that paragraph dealing with the 4 years, as opposed to the whole subsection of the lease.
Yes.
Thank you, Hillary, for that. And Hillary, we can revisit that particular area at a language review if we continue to, if we choose to move forward.
Sure, you would want to include each of those in any amendment if the committee wants to move forward an amendment on the bill, but I would draft it based on the parameters of those that we just discussed, if that's how the committee wants to move forward.
Thank you. Folks, any further discussion, representative questions or discussion? Representative McCray.
No, Mr. Chair, I just, when you're ready for a motion, I'd like to make the motion.
Yes, sir. We're at that point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that LD 1989, inclusive of the amendments that were just mentioned by the analyst, be passed.
Second that.
And that was a motion by Representative McCray, seconded by Representative Dodge. Any further discussion, folks? I have two hands up. I have Representative Stearns, followed by Representative Carlo.
I would just comment that should this proposed amendment move forward, and I will be voting in favor of it, that it be put in a file somewhere in SAD 6 and completely forgotten about, because the relationship will continue on and good things will happen.
Thank you, sir. Representative Carlo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative McCray, for making the motion and for your continued indulgence of my comments on this bill. I just want to get some clarity. So the motion is to approve the amendment requiring language in the lease that would allow either party to terminate the lease at any time. That's what the motion is.
Yes. Yes, sir.
If I may, I did speak with the Historical Society about this amendment. And it seems to us that if you want to maintain the local control component, that amendment not be included in the bill. Let the school district negotiate with the Historical Society its own lease terms. Now, my position would be that a lease that can be suspended at any time, either party, is not really a lease at all. So that's my position on the amendment. I did introduce a sponsor amendment correcting the address, so I'm in favor of that amendment. But I do have concerns, and I know Jan has concerns as well, with requiring this component, requiring a termination clause for either. I know that there are concerns there, and I just want to give you pause before you vote. And
Thank you. Just for my own clarification, Representative Carlo, someone wanted to opt out of a lease. That's all right. I'm not going there. Representative Stearns.
Representative Carlo brought up a good point that the current language proposed that's now on the table, it almost sounds like when you talk about ending the lease at any time, that could be a very quick timetable. I might see if we could maybe offer a friendly amendment that there would need to be, and again, I keep referring to the out clause, and that they could end the lease and they on an agreed amount of time, not to exceed 4 years. And that would, if both parties then were to get together and say, okay, we're going to do a 20-year lease, and either party can end this lease within, but they have to give 4 years notice. In my opinion, that would give them some pretty good latitude moving forward, and yet it would still honor the portion of that statute which is already predicated on a 4-year lease timetable, if you will. But that would give them the latitude as both parties speak with their legal counsel on what would be the best timetable for notification to want to end the lease by either party. That would give them significant latitude on that timetable.
Thank you, sir. I have a hand up from Representative Woodson. I'm sorry, Senator Woodson.
Okay, thank you. Hillary, do we need to put that language in there? I mean, could we not leave it, forget the language on termination of whatever you want to say, and just leave it as a mutual agreement between the district and the Historical Society?
Yes, regarding the termination language, I think that's completely a policy decision of the committee, and I can draft whatever the committee would like that to be.
Because I just feel this is a situation that they need to resolve themselves, not us. But I mean, we can give them the permission to go to that point, and then they decide what kind of agreement they want. That, to me, I don't know. What's other people think?
So Senator Woodson, you're basically saying we'll move forward, but we want to just have the ability to allow the two parties to have a mutually agreed end to any lease.
Exactly.
Okay.
Does that meet the needs, Ms. Hill and Representative Callow?
I see Ms. Hill has her hand up. You're muted, I believe.
Person in here. Get my, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, good. My technical support had to offer pushing the button. I just wanted to point out that in our existing lease with the school district, we already have the clause that you're talking about. So personally, I don't feel the need at the legislative level to include it because it's already in the lease and we can negotiate that if we want to change it, if there is a need to change it, which I would think there probably will be some negotiation involved with that because that is limiting to us. Although I understand both sides of it and the importance of having that ability to discontinue on both sides, really. But it's not anything certainly not anything we're interested in doing right now, but we certainly, if this was to pass at the legislative level, then we undoubtedly will be going forward with some negotiations on our existing lease. The important point to notice is that it already is in our lease, so it'd be redundant, I think, to include it in this bill. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Representative Millette with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much a question, just weighing in on all of this discussion. I really do appreciate what Representative Stearns is trying to get at in terms of bringing in language that would honor existing statute. However, at the same time, I feel very uncomfortable inserting ourselves in the middle of a local decision around resource management. And I do feel that the community elected their board, which oversees their superintendent, right? I think most of us are very clear about how accountability works at the local level. And if there are serious issues related to what is trying to be achieved here in that community, I think the community can handle that issue. I mean, I'm very well aware that there could be a time when the school population would grow and they may need to have that building back, but I feel like that's for the community to work out. And it sounds like that they have to a degree already. So I'm falling on the side of not inserting ourselves. We have been asked to weigh in on other local issues in a particular lake region, in a particular ski mountain area, where they wanted us to solve their local struggles. And I want to respect the fact that they need to work it out. They have elected their own officials within their communities to do that work. So I would encourage the Representative McCray to make clear whether he would change his motion, what that actual amendment would be before we vote. I'm pretty muddied now as to where we stand. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel as though I'm in a little bit of that mud myself, so we'll get clarification. Representative McCray, if you would be kind enough to clarify.
Well, I'm kind of in that same mud hole. So there was one piece that Representative Carlo mentioned that, at least from his perspective, there was an objection to the 3-bullet piece of amendment that Hillary brought to us. And I can't remember exactly which piece that was. Representative, you could clear that up for me?
Hillary probably can.
Okay, Hillary. Either one.
Thank you, sir. Hillary?
Sure. So there are sort of 4 provisions of the potential amendment as I see them right now. One is the very technical, we need to change the address in the bill as currently drafted from 94 to 100 Main Street in Buckcoat. 2 is updating the bill currently specifically says MSAD 6, and there was a suggestion that that should be changed to match the certificate of organization, which is Regional School Unit 6 doing business as School Administrative District 6. 3 is the potential language to address the termination of the contract. I think this is what Representative Carlo was expressing reservations about. And then 4 would be amending the bill to specify that the exemption is not for the entire provision regarding leases, but specifically the paragraph of law that restricts it to 4 years. So it's just narrowing that exception, which sounds like the intent. So I think 3 of those sound to me more or less agreed upon. The one that's still in question is whether there should be language in the bill that would require the lease to provide that either party may terminate the lease. And if so, does the bill want to further specify that that is something that is mutually agreed upon in the lease? Either that they must terminate on a specific date, or it must terminate upon a mutually agreed upon time frame that's specified in the lease, or something to that effect. So that was the one component I think that's still up in the air.
Okay, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Hillary.
What I'd like to hear from is the 2 parties that are here, Representative Carlo and Ms. Hill. I'm perfectly willing to alter my motion once we hear on item 3 having to do with the terms. If you 2 can agree that it'll be in the new lease as negotiated by 2 parties, I'm fine with that, and I'll go with it, of course.
I have a hand up from Representative Carlo. I also have a question following that from Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty and Representative McCray, for posing that question. I am supportive of the first 2 technical amendments. The first amendment being the address change, the second amendment being business entity name identified in the bill. I'm supportive of those 2 amendments, and I don't want to speak for Jan. Relatively certain, though, that she's supportive of those amendments too. The third amendment is what I have concern with. Potential fourth amendment, I don't necessarily see that being an issue, but I'm going to defer to Jan for her input on the fourth amendment. But I think that we're all in agreement with the first 2 being included in the bill, the third amendment not being included in the bill, and the fourth amendment. We'll see what Jan has to say about the fourth amendment. I'm not outright opposed to it.
Thank you. I'm going to give Ms. Hill a moment to think on that, as Representative Stearns has an additional question as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would pull back on my notion of inserting a timetable on the agreement, but I will not support the bill, the amendment, unless it does require both parties to negotiate a lease opt-out clause at that point. But I would not be, I'll back away from the specificity that would set the timetable on that.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Hill?
Okay. I am certainly in support of 1 and 2 as well. We are again focused on the term of the lease, so potential language to change the terms of the contract. We'd like to have, I would say that, let's see, let me read this here. I don't have it right in front of me. I basically am supporting the term of the change to narrow the intent of the term to, I'd like to have it either 2 10-year terms or a 20-year term, something to that extent. And so the existing wording is fine as far as I'm concerned on 3. Let's see. Intent to narrow the intent to the, would you remind me what 4 is again, please?
That was to, I believe, to specify the number of years.
Okay. Well, I think we should specify the number of years, yes. And I'm content to go along with what's in the bill at this present time.
If I may, Senator.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me pull this up because I know this is something I raised just now, and I think it'll be easier if I just walk the committee through exactly what is happening here. So I'm pulling up Title 20A, Section 4103 again, which, as I said, governs disposal or other use of real property closed for school purposes. At issue is here in subsection 2, which governs the lease, use, and use of proceeds. The bill, as currently drafted, says that notwithstanding Maine Revised Statutes Title 20A, Section 4103, subsection 2, the Board of Directors may lease the building for a term of not more than 20 years. Subsection 2 of the law covers this entire subsection here. So it includes that leases may not exceed 4 years. It includes how the proceeds of the lease shall be used, and it includes any renovations to the lease building has to be compatible with its reuse as a school building. So my suggestion was for the committee is that if the only intent is to exempt it from the 4-year lease provision so that they may lease for more than 20 years, then the bill should be amended to say that it exempts it from Section 4103, subsection 2, paragraph A.
That's fine.
Thank you, Hillary. And did I lose Representative here we go. Representative Millette, followed by Representative McCray.
So I'm just going to try to give a stab on what an actual motion would sound like without actually making it, because I believe that probably Representative McCray wants to do that. So I think in the amendment, we would want what Representative Carlo originally proposed were all those technical amendments. I would support including the amendment that Ms. Risler just walked us through. And then I would support including what Representative Stearns is getting at, was just to require that the lease address a withdrawal from the lease. Not putting any time frame around it, but just that must be included in the agreement. Representative Stearns, is that what you were saying? Yes, great. So I think that those are the 3 aspects to a motion that I think I can get behind. And I'll let Representative McCray weigh in. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McCray.
Yes, I would be fine in making that be my motion and withdrawing the former wording.
Thank you. Representative
I would support.
Oh,
Thank
Yeah.
you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, based on what Representative Millet just said, does that mean that if we put in the language that she just suggested, that it doesn't lock a district into a 20-year lease if the parties decide that they want to terminate?
yes, it would be mutual.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I cut you off, Representative Dodge. I know you were probably interested in addressing the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. I was going to offer my second to the motion of ought to pass as amended for LD 1989A and as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion, folks? Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try not to take the train off the track. So what this would allow then would be an exemption from the from the current 4-year limit and increase that to up to 20 years, which was part of the original intent of the bill. And it would also require both parties to get together and determine what the termination language would be required. But it's possible that they could sit down and say, well, you've got to give us 20 years notice. And I doubt that. But if that were the case for either party, then those local folks are going to have to live with the ramifications of that decision moving down the trail. So I think I've kind of framed, and also the technical portion of the amendment stands as well.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Nods.
Yes. Any additional discussion? Eli, I will ask, sir, that you call the roll, please, relative to 1989.
Sure. So on an ultimate motion of ought to pass as amended for LD 1989, Senator Rafferty.
Yes.
Senator Rafferty votes yes. Senator Daughtry. Senator Daughtry is absent. Senator Woodsum.
Yes.
Senator Woodsum votes yes. Representative Brennan. Representative Brennan is absent. Representative Crockett.
Yes.
Representative Crockett votes yes. Representative Dodge.
Yay.
Representative Dodge votes yay. Representative Lyman.
Yes.
Representative Lyman votes yes. Representative McCray.
Yes.
Representative McCray votes yes. Representative Millet.
Yes.
Representative Millet votes yes. Representative Roach.
Yes.
Representative Roach votes yes. Representative Salisbury. Representative Salisbury is absent for the purposes of this vote. Representative Sampson. Representative Sampson is absent. Representative Stearns.
Yes.
Representative Stearns votes yes. With a vote of 9 yes and 4 absent, the motion carries.
Folks, thank you very much. Thank you, Representative Carlo. Thank you, Ms. Hill, for being with us this morning. We
Thank you.
appreciate your help and settleness.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Folks, I'm looking at, just quickly taking a look at the time. We're at 11:30. We do have 2 additional work sessions. And we are under a time constraint on 16:32. That gives us about an hour to work on LD 1727. I know that there is a lot of parts to that. And quite honestly, anticipated that we may take more time than today to do so. So I'd like to actually go through that, listen to Hillary's review, and we can at least get all our questions answered and see how the session's moving based on our time constraints. And I'll we'll have to obviously move to LD 1632 within a few minutes of the 12:30 mark. So, Hillary, if we could, then I'll open the work session on LD 1727. And give you the opportunity to share your analysis, please.
Sure. I'll start by going through the bill analysis, and I know it's a little bit long, so I'll try to move relatively quickly through it. As the committee knows, you received a proposed amendment from President Jackson before the public hearing, and so that is the basis of the bill analysis, is President Jackson's amendment. So as you heard at the public hearing, the sponsoring proponents of the bill submitted this potential amendment. As amended, the bill would do the following. It enacts a new chapter of law in Title 20A governing sexual misconduct on college campuses. Provides necessary definitions for terms used in the chapter, including but not limited to affirmative consent, employee, intimate partner violence, reporting and responding party, sexual violence, Title IX coordinator, and trauma-informed response. It requires institutions of higher education in the state to each adopt a policy on sexual violence, intimate partner violence, and stalking. The policy must be consistent with applicable state and federal law, available on campus where students regularly congregate, and on the institution's website. The bill lists how the policy must be developed and its content, and includes all of the bullet points I've listed here, such as procedures by which students and employees may report or disclose alleged incidents, regardless of where the incident occurs, information on where a reporting party may receive emergency assistance, descriptions of and the types of contact information for counseling, health, safety, academic, and other support services, the rights and obligations of students and employees to notify or decline to notify law enforcement, receive assistance from campus authorities, and obtain court or institution-issued protection order. The process for requesting supporting measures reasonably available from the institution, including options for changing academic, living, campus transportation, or work arrangements, or leave of absence. Contact information for the closest local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, and summaries of institutions' procedures for investigating, adjudicating, and resolving complaints against students, regardless of where the alleged offense occurred. This policy must further provide procedures be uniformly applied for all disciplinary proceedings, any investigation be conducted by an individual who receives not less than annual training. Both parties are provided a copy of the policy. Both parties informed in writing of the results of the proceeding and any process for appeal. That the institution may not publicly disclose the identity of either party except as necessary to carry out the proceeding or as otherwise permitted under state and federal law, and that the institution's disciplinary process may not serve as a substitute for the criminal justice process. The original policy include a summary of the institution's employee disciplinary processes as it pertains to sexual violence, intimate partner violence, or stalking, in the range of sanctions and penalties that may be imposed. The bill also provides requirements regarding adoption of and amendments to the policy, public access, confidentiality, and an interoperability clause, which I'll touch on in a moment. The amended version of the bill requires each institution to provide both parties with written notice of disciplinary proceedings sufficiently in advance to provide both parties with the opportunity to meaningfully exercise their rights. It creates the Higher Education Interpersonal Violence Advisory Commission to develop a biennial interpersonal violence climate survey to be provided to the Commissioner of Education and disseminated to institutions of higher education to conduct the surveys on each of their campuses, and includes a number of things specified that the climate survey has to be designed to include or to gather information on. The department is required to disseminate the climate survey and engage in data collection, adopt rules, and protect personal information. The bill is amended further requires institutions of higher education to designate confidential resource advisors and provide confidential resource advisors with qualified privilege as specified in the bill, and requires training for confidential resource advisors and individuals involved in the institution's disciplinary process. Confidential resource advisors would be responsible for providing specified information and resources regarding incidents and coordinate with appropriate institutional personnel to provide direct assistance to a student or employee regarding changes in academic, dining, housing, transportation, or campus employment, access to counseling and other mental health services, excused absences, academic counseling and tutoring, and academic coursework accommodations and financial resources. The confidential resource advisor, excuse the typo, is also required to notify all school staff who are involved in providing or enforcing supportive measures or accommodations of their duties. They may assist in student contacting or report to campus or local law enforcement, notify a student of their rights and the institution's responsibilities regarding protection and no contact orders, may not be required to report the incident to the institution or law enforcement officer unless otherwise required to do so by state or federal law, and must provide confidential services to students or employees, may attend administrative adjudication, may disclose confidential information by prior written consent or if required by state or federal law, may not provide services to both parties, and may not act as a counselor or therapist unless otherwise licensed as such and is engaged in that capacity. This bill also requires institutions of higher education in collaboration with others to provide mandatory annual prevention and awareness programming on sexual violence, intimate partner violence, and stalking for all students and employees. That includes the specified topics, which include affirmative consent, drugs and alcohol, options for reporting, procedures and sanctions and penalties, contact info for the confidential resource advisor, bystander intervention and risk reduction, and training that is sensitive to and recognizes the disproportionate impacts on marginalized groups. It requires training for individuals involved in the disciplinary process. It requires institutions of higher education to report to the legislature the annual security report under the Federal Clery Act. Provides certain specific immunity to students who report or request investigations into incidents of sexual violence, intimate partner violence, or stalking. Requires institutions of higher education to enter into MOUs with DHHS funded rape crisis centers or domestic violence support centers. And this requirement may be waived upon a showing of good faith effort to comply, but the institution otherwise was not able to. And it provides a Commissioner of Education Enforcement Authority and provides that a civil penalty of not more than $150,000 or 1% of an institution's operating budget, whichever is lower, may be adjudged for a violation. And it provides that the Commissioner may adopt routine technical rules to implement the chapter regarding the climate survey. Obviously, there's a lot in this bill, and that was meant to be a summary, but if at any point as we get into the discussion and you want to narrow in on any of these components, I'm happy to bring up the proposed amendment on the screen itself so you can see what is actually in there currently. I did not have time to do a full public hearing testimony summary, and as the committee just heard this bill, but the link is there if there's any testimony the committee wants to review. I would note that the department did submit some written testimony, although they did not testify in person, about some concerns with responsibility for overseeing and regulating the operations of the state's colleges and universities in regards to LD 1727. So there are some drafting considerations, and I don't need to go through all of these necessarily. But just a heads up, if the committee wants to move forward with the amendment as proposed, there are a couple definitions that aren't necessary, for example, commissioner in the department, because they're already defined elsewhere for the title. I think in the revision of the amendment from being specific to sexual misconduct to the change to sexual violence, intimate partner violence, or stalking, there were a couple places I noticed it looks like it hadn't been changed. And I would just want to confirm with the committee whether that was intentional or whether that was just an oversight, and it should say sexual violence, intimate partner violence, or stalking everywhere it previously said sexual misconduct. There was an inoperability clause added in the proposed amendment, and under the main revised statutes, Title I, Section 71, we actually already have a severability clause, which provides that if any provision or application of law is invalid, the valid provisions or applications of that law are unaffected. And so I don't think that needs to be added in here. It's covered by that general statutory interpretation provision of law and can create some confusion if it's included individually. One of the amendments was regarding whether the commission can accept funds for outside sources, and if the committee wants to move forward with that, we may just need some language that would establish that fund. And then there was a sentence specific to the confidential resource advisor and the cross-examination of a confidential resource advisor. And it states that a confidential resource advisor shall not act as a counselor or therapist. I know that's included elsewhere in the bill, and it wasn't clear to me the intent on how this relates to specifically to cross-examination. So that may be something the committee wants to clarify if you want to move forward with the amendment as drafted. There are a number of people today with the committee asked a lot of questions about how this bill may interact or conflict with federal law. I would just note sort of briefly that, as the committee knows, congressional acts limit the actions of state legislatures in two ways. First, under the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, the state may not pass a law that contradicts or interferes with the operation of legislation passed by Congress. In the case of a conflict, the federal law is said to preempt the state law. Additionally, however, Congress may also place limits on how the state administers federally funded programs. And to the extent that there would be a way that this could conflict with any of those programs, there could be concern of limiting or making it difficult for the higher institutions to receive some of their federal funds. I know there are many people here who are going to talk about those specific issues much more than I am today. So I'll finish up with the bill analysis, and then you may want to hear from those attorneys. As I mentioned, there's a request for how more information on this bill conflicts with federal law, and I've tried to get all those attorneys here to be able to talk the committee through some of that. There was also a request for more information on current policies, procedures, and interaction and/or communication between campus organizations and Title IX folks on the availability of services and how consistent that communication is within a system and across the state. And Sam Warren from the University of Maine system provided some links here specific to what Title IX requires, and this would apply across all of those institutions. I wasn't going to pull that up, but I'm sure they can talk about that more if you would like more information on that topic. The committee also received over the weekend a proposed amendment that a number of the higher education and nonprofit organizations had specifically mentioned they were working on during the public hearing. I'm happy to go into that proposed amendment at any point if the committee would like me to, although obviously I was not involved in the drafting of that in any way. So I did put together a quick chart just trying to identify which parts of the amended version of the bill still exist in that proposed amendment, because that was specifically requested from a committee member. But other than that, I would defer questions on that amendment to those who actually wrote it and are submitting it to you for your consideration. One thing that I would mention in that proposed version was some new information at the federal level regarding a federal mandated climate survey. And that is something that those members may also have more information for the committee as well. Senator Rafferty, I think you are muted still.
I think one of you did that on purpose. So thank you, Hillary. So that was excellent. A question, I know relative to the survey piece, and you alluded to that there were some federal provisions. Just trying to confirm, because I know there was somewhere I read 2 years between surveys and 3 years between surveys. But where this applies to community colleges, and most of those being 2-year programs, it seems like 2 years made the most sense. But what was in the federal requirement? Do you know in terms of the years what that looked like?
I don't have all the details of what's in the federal. I do know that some people in the waiting room, I'm sure, do. I was just trying to pull up an email that had some of those details, but I don't have them off the top of my head.
Well, I know there was certainly a number of emails. So I'm gonna stop for a moment. I do know that we do have a couple of the attorneys representing different sides, which we can get in a moment, but I'd like to take the questions, get those out, and then go from there in terms of who we call in. Senator Woodson, followed by Representative Dodge, please.
Thank you. I guess this question, it would be for the DOE, Department of Education, and the higher institutions, private and public. Looking at Senator Jackson's amendment, and to meet all of the guidelines or requests, that's not the right word, but the guidelines required, if passed, would there be a need for an administrator, in other words, someone within the Department of Education to oversee this operation? And I think as discussion goes on, that can be answered, but I don't need an answer right now, but I'm just seeing, is this creating another position, I guess? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I know that we had, I've received a number of questions, so I guess the potential for a fiscal impact, I think, would be what we're trying to get at as well. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Hillary, for your work. I wonder would it be valuable for us as a committee to look at the document that Ms. Risler prepared showing the agreement between the proposed amendment from the higher education folks and where that agrees with Senator Jackson's amendment? Would that be helpful to sort of clear up some of the questions or no? Thank you.
I'm sure it will be helpful. Prior to walking through that, I mean, are there other questions? That document will probably create some more, but are there any other questions we can give folks in the audience some thought time to answer? Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a couple of those questions if you want me to share those at this time. I have a question about the design of the climate survey and the I don't have the right word, but the possibility of the climate survey questions not answering the information that is needed for individual college campuses, as well as satisfying federal data under the Clery Act. That's one question. And the second question has to do with the confidential resource officer. There was a phrase that said the confidential resource officer must or does not need to notify either the institution or a law enforcement agency. And so my question is, how then can we be sure that institutions and data are getting appropriate information if that doesn't happen in some way, even if it's just a check mark that an incident of some sort occurred? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions that people want to at least get out there before we go to that comparison? Seeing none at this time. Hillary, do you mind walking us through the comparison, please?
Sure, I'm happy to walk through the comparison. I would just remind the committee, of course, that I was not involved in the drafting of this particular amendment. And so I would ask to defer substantive questions to those who did work on it. Unfortunately, the way we received it was not in any sort of track changes or normal strike or replace version, so it was a little bit difficult. So I did my best to figure out where the changes were, and I did actually also send it over to Sam Warren and Becky Smith to see if they could identify anything I missed. So I think we're pretty good on it now. But that is a caveat, it was done pretty quickly. And I'm not going to go through the drafting considerations. Most of these are identical to those that I just mentioned in the President Jackson's amendment. But I don't want to make any surprises. So I think it's good to just let you know that they exist moving forward. Both drafts include a definition section, but the one proposed by the working group, and for the sake of clarity, I'm just going to call it the working group proposed amendment. Working group amendment adds a definition of cultural competence. It amends employee to move for any other reason. It amends reporting party to include a third-party reporter. It amends the definition of student, and amends the definition of trauma-informed response. The working group draft removes the section that has to do with adoption of policies, and it removes from the draft the notice to proceed. And that should be 12953 there, apologies. With regards to the advisory commission, it has the same membership, although they're slightly reordered. So if you thought they were different like I did, that's why. It's just because they were reordered slightly. But it removes, it's the same as the President Jackson's amendment, except that it removes that it's created to provide recommendations on the content, timing, and application of the survey, and removes that specific list of information to be gathered. In the climate survey dissemination and data collecting and reporting, it amends reference to the Federal Violence Against Women's Act Authorization Act of 2022. I would just note this is what I was just talking about with some new federal requirements, and I would just want to confirm that that has in fact passed, because if it's not, it could be premature to sort of reference something that hasn't actually happened yet. So that will be a question if the committee wants to move forward on this version of the draft. The working group draft removes the section on confidential resource advisors. On the awareness programming, it's the same as the proposed amendment, except that while it maintains that schools should provide training, it removes it being mandatory each year. And it removes a reference to guidance from the Title IX Coordinator, Local Law Enforcement and Sexual Assault Support Center and Domestic Violence Resource Center. The training for individuals involved in the disciplinary process remains the same. They just added the Title IX Coordinator and campus safety personnel in that section header. The reporting is the same in the working group draft. The immunity provision for students is the same, except that it adds that the issue must have come to the institution's attention as part of the report or investigation. And it also removes the trespassing and unauthorized entry of facilities portion for which a student would receive immunity. The MOU is the same, except that it removes policy development and training. It adds as defined, which actually is not in this case necessary, because those terms, if they are defined, are used as they are defined. It does add a more expansive definition of student that is specific to just this section, not the rest of the chapter. It adds an effective date for these MOUs of July 1st of 2023. And it changes some of the language around the free transportation obligations of the institution. The working group draft also removes the enforcement penalty provision, and it removes the rulemaking provision. Although it does include one of the earlier rulemaking provisions of the department that would just need to be specified in that section, whether they were routine, technical, or major substantive.
Thank you. We have any additional questions, folks? So if I could, I'm going to bring out the resource advisors. Seems to be a sticking point. So if I would like to, in that we're dealing with President Jackson's bill as amended, if we could bring in someone from Every Voice Matters. I believe I guess it makes most sense to bring in, I believe the attorney's name is Elizabeth Tang, but I could be wrong on that. They present Eli in the, so I'm going to give, I'd like to hear about the need of the resource advisors, and then someone to offer us why the opposition to that. So that's what I'd like to target right now, if we could.
Hi, this is Elizabeth from the National Women's Law Center. I apologize, but I actually have a hard stop at 12 p.m. I need to join another meeting, but I can answer any questions in the next 3 minutes.
Well, I'm specifically trying to, there's the request for the position of resource advisor. I know there's some opposition to that, and I want to know specifically why you feel that that is so important.
Well, with respect to that question, I would defer to the student and survivor advocates who have really led on drafting this portion of the bill, but I can say from a legal standpoint, there's nothing legally that would prohibit schools from providing this option. from providing this resource to students who want it. But I think in terms of the substantive reasons why, I would really defer to what the student survivor advocates have advocated for. And I believe the gist of it is that they want more options. There's a lack of options on campus, and the experiences of survivors on campus have informed them that this is something that would be very valuable and is very necessary to really provide a full range of options for them. But I know they can provide more details on this.
All right, so if I could then if we could, Eli, I think there are a couple of student advisors, as I recall. I've tried to write them all down, but I may have names wrong. I think there was India and Lottie, or perhaps Lily James. One of those, I think, were one of the students. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the committee.
Morning.
My name is Lily James. I serve as co-executive director for the Every Voice Coalition, and I'm very happy to be here with you this morning and happy to answer any questions about CRAs and confidential resource advisors. Should I just go ahead and dive in, and then I'm happy to field any sort of additional questions?
I think that, so what I'm trying to get at is during the gist of your conversations, this term came up when you were together. And at the hearing, it seemed as though you folks were in favor, the other side was resistant. And I'm trying to get, I guess, what was the temperature in the room at the time of these discussions? And was there resistance at that time? Or I guess I would want a little bit of summary, if you could, as to those conversations.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to answer those questions. I think where I would begin with the confidential resource advisor discussion is that, there's a lot of questions in this bill about legality or, the specific language. But in this conversation about confidential resource advisors, what it really comes down to is philosophy and what different parties and different groups are seeing as a need on campus or are identifying as a specific way to address a need. So for Every Voice Coalition, we are students, young alums, and survivor-led, and we base all of our considerations and all of our bill language off of conversations with students who then help us in drafting. And, two of our students are here today. I graduated in 2021 from college, so we're all recent alums or students. And where we come from with the confidential resource advisors, as Elizabeth just mentioned, is that on campus right now, there's a severe lack of options. And so what exists currently is the Title IX process, which from studies show that some 95% of student survivors choose not to go through that process. So for the 5% that do, that's a very important process to focus on. But then what we ask is what happens to the remaining 95% of student survivors who are then left with no more options, who are then left with no one else to talk to about what resources, supportive measures, and options they have left. So that's where we designed and have, put into place the confidential resource advisor position, who, just as some context, acts very similarly to just a student advisor that a freshman would get when they come to college as a freshman, new to a campus community, new to college, unsure, what next steps, what lies in wait. And so that's somebody who, an academic advisor can talk to a student about what classes to take, what they can do for extracurricular activities, things like that to help them guide them through being on campus for the first time. So a confidential resource advisor is designed to be very similar to that role, except to specifically serve those who have experienced sexual violence. And so we can get into the specifics of what the position does, but for us, where we see that being so important is having it be an on-campus resource. And so there are folks who can offer similar services in an off-campus location, such as a crisis center that a school may have an MOU with through this law as well. But having an on-campus resource, we hear again and again from students, is crucial, because you're going to classes, you're going to sports, you're going to extracurriculars. You may not have time to go to an off-campus resource, especially in a state like Maine. I live in Maine. There's a lot of places that are not easily accessible from campuses. And so having a resource that is on campus, always available, is crucial to ensuring that students are actually met with the support they need in any given moment. And so again, happy to sort of go through specifics and really appreciated a lot of the questions about that. But philosophically, again, just to conclude, what we see as crucial is expanding options, and specifically expanding options that exist on campus for students and are not existent in off-campus locations that are sometimes, unfortunately, not always accessible to students.
Thank you very much. And I guess I would have to follow up with, so you're sitting at the initial hearing, and were you surprised or did you expect resistance to the CRAs at that time?
Mr. Chair, I wouldn't say I'm surprised, because for the last 2 years in advance of introducing this bill, we've worked with all different stakeholders involved in drafting this, and have come to the table in many, many cases, have already made immense changes to the bill language. This bill language that we have proposed today is the product of really fantastic collaboration and stakeholder engagement on the language, and is a reflection of a lot of previous changes made in the past 2 years. And so to now be at a point where, after months and years of collaboration, we're getting to a point where it's either the version that we've all collaborated on or nothing, is surprising and is saddening, because we've spent so much time getting to a place that we thought everybody felt really good about. And lastly, when we talk to students about, again, they're really excited about what we've ultimately came up with in terms of language and after stakeholder engagement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question from Representative Millette.
There it goes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Had you seen what we received over the weekend, this proposed amendment from this separate group?
Thank you, Representative. No, we received this amendment on Saturday afternoon, I believe. So I spent the weekend reviewing it and looking it over, but had not seen it or had any information about what they were putting into this amendment prior. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, folks, of these folks while we have them? I know I'm trying to get at the CRA issue. I know it's a big sticking point. Seeing none at this time, girls, if you, I'm sure you'll continue to be available. But at this time, Eli, I'd like to actually call someone in that could address the issues in opposition to the CRAs. I don't know who that would best be.
We have representatives from the, I see in the chat, Andrea M. I believe that would be Andrea Mancuso. I can promote her now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Mancuso. I'm sure you've been listening to our conversation. And again, I'm trying to get at, I know there's disagreement with the CRAs. those conversations existed during your, your conversations throughout months, or if not years, but just trying to get at what's at the center of the opposition of that position, please.
I think there's a lot that rests at the center of that opposition, Senator Rafferty. I think, together with the MICASA network, MCDV's network has 13 victim service agencies across Maine, plus the Child Advocacy Center network. And these advocates are staffed with colleagues who can support them around privilege. Our networks, the advocates that are in our networks have the same type of privilege that's contemplated here. And they're constantly battling to hold the confidentiality boundary. Every day advocates within our network have to push back frequently and often against the most well-intentioned and long-standing community partners to remind them of our confidentiality, why it exists, how the broad umbrella of it does help protect survivors. And it's incredibly hard, and we've seen this in our criminal justice system, embedded advocates, to put that level of confidentiality burden on a single human in a network that has sort of a different fidelity of approach. One of the very concrete examples that comes for me is what happens when the two students move into the civil court on a protection from abuse case. And the defendant, the alleged perpetrator, subpoenas the confidential resource advisor, who is an employee of the institution. So you have these two students in a civil legal case, so you're out of the institution response. And you have the institution that then needs to decide how they're going to respond to the fact that their employee has been subpoenaed by one student, and the other student is filing a motion to quash. Does not wants to invoke their privilege. What does the institution do with that? I think, the other thing that we see is there's been an acknowledgement all along that given some of the small nature of some of Maine's campuses, that the size of some of the campuses would not sustain a full-time employee in this confidential resource advisor role. So you'd necessarily build in the ability of multiple campuses to share a full-time confidential resource advisor, which then loses some of the benefits that has been discussed about having someone who's sort of embedded in the campus system, who has the resource knowledge A through Z, who is going to the classes and going to the extracurricular activities. The utility of that approach is eroded, and we see it as a much better approach to create linkages to the existing resources already in that community. I don't disagree with Ms. James that there's a number of students who don't ever want to go through the Title IX process. I think that's a reality that we see, and we don't push back against that reality at all. The amendment that you received from the working group does represent an unprecedented level of collaboration and commitment from the institutions of higher education with the local resource centers in both of our networks. It would create something that has never existed in our state before in terms of collaboration and linkage to resources. And it has been our position that moves the mountain so far that we should take that approach, implement the campus climate survey, have the commission look at. With that, then what does the environment look like? What is still needed? And then possibly reopen the conversation about the confidential resource advisors. That we think the best and most prudent first step would be to strengthen the MOU relationship and then build the structures for additional data and communication and collaboration to be able to then move to the next step if it's needed.
Wouldn't if the other side saying let's build a structure and remove pieces of it that aren't working down the road? So again, thank you. A question from Representative Millette and Ms. James. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple of questions, if I may. First, you mentioned that, I don't know, yeah, you brought up issues around possible conflicts if one student subpoenas an employee and another student doesn't want, et cetera. But I believe that we have received information that the CRA model has been implemented in other states. And so I'm wondering, what is it about Maine that would prove to be more challenging to implement the CRA model than it is, say, in Massachusetts or Indiana or other states that have implemented the CRA model?
With full disclosure, I'm not well versed in those other states' systems, and so can only speak to what I know in connecting with some of our colleagues in those other states. Mikasa and MCDV did reach out to our colleagues in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And it is my understanding that some of those issues are avoided to some extent because the universities have decided that they will provide the CRA position through the existing local agency. So they are in fact contracting with, say, one of our network agencies to be that confidential resource advisor on campus. At least a number of the institutions, that's my understanding, is the planning was still in place for that. But when we connected, when we initially started having conversations with the students in Senator Jackson's office, that was the trajectory that many of the institutions were leaning into, to my understanding, with some of those same concerns.
Thank you. And have you shared this amendment with the sponsor?
Yes. Ms. Russo received a copy of the amendment, and
let me rephrase that. Did you work with the sponsor on this amendment?
We had a number of meetings with Ms. Russo and the Senate President and a couple of others from that office, together with the Every Voice Coalition students over the last couple of years. Our language should not be a surprise. I think we had provided, I know Mikasa and MCDV and Pine Tree Legal Assistance had provided Every Voice Coalition and the Senate President's Office with, I think, 3 back and forth edits, all of which were consistent on the removal of the specific policies and the confidential resource advisor over the last 2 years.
Thank you.
Ms. James, did you have a question?
I'm wondering, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Millette, for those questions. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to also provide some context on what other states are doing in response to Representative Millette's question, given that we're involved in the implementation of our laws in those states as well. Would that be helpful context as well?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, happy to answer those questions. So we have implemented these successfully in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And in addition to our laws in those states, this is an existing statute in some other states as well. And to your question, Representative Millette, I think that is also our question, is that we do not see it as any different in Maine because we have seen it be very successful in other states. To what Ms. Manosko was saying, excuse me for mispronouncing your name, the language in the bill is intentionally providing some flexibility. So for schools that do want to have the confidential resource advisors through the center that they're MOU'd with, that's a great option. And to what she was saying, something that we've seen some schools doing. And on some other schools, we've seen them implementing it on their campus, especially campuses that may not be close to a center or have a, existing relationship, et cetera. So for example, I was last Monday just speaking with a CRA at an institution in Massachusetts who was discussing sort of how she has been going about her job. And she was giving us really helpful feedback that so far it does feel like it's a really important resource for her students. And she has seen it be implemented very successfully on her campus. And she, again, is campus based. So, again, that's a lot of the intention of this statute is to provide flexibility. And just to be clear, however, we have seen it implemented on specific campuses in addition to some campuses choosing to do it, through the centers.
Thank you. Any other questions, folks, at this time relative to the CRAs? So, Ms. Mancuso, you feel that, I want to make sure I understand this. Because of the size of some of our campuses, it would be difficult, the logistics of having a person on a campus or each campus create some limitations or potential problems. Are there, I'm guessing that there are other sources that campuses share. Is that a true assumption or not, you know?
I will say, so I represent the Maine Coalition to End Domestic Violence. I would welcome a representative from one of the institutions to speak to how they might share other resources. One additional thing that I would just mention too is Maine is fairly unique in the level that we've been able to resource and leverage civil legal services for student survivors. And I know Melissa Martin is here in the Zoom waiting room. She spoke at the public hearing. That's a resource that our colleagues in other states are unable to connect students to. And we think that also adds a layer of benefit to connecting students more thoughtfully with the off-campus resources, because we do serve as the referral source to get access to that civil legal representation, and that comes with absolute privilege. You don't get higher privilege than that between attorney and client, and that's another, one of the things that that we have observed is the lack of intentional collaboration between institutions and the local resource centers really has siloed a response on campus. It's sort of like the campus putting the garden walls around the institution, particularly for those campuses where students live on campus. That's their existence. That's what they know. That's where they live. And one of our concerns is that this sort of the confidential resource advisor position sort of feeds into that, and that you will continue to see a tunneling of on-campus exclusive response, and you lose some of the benefit of the MOU section and trying to sort of break down those walls and link students into off-campus resources. Not all students want to use their Title IX process, and not all students want to process their trauma on campus. There are a number of students who actually do want to go into the community and are sort of unsure how to get there and how to do that. And I think that the MOU process that we've structured into the bill creates a level of collaboration around that reality that has not previously existed in the state. Universally. I will say some of our centers, some of MICASA centers, and some of the institutions of higher education have done this quite well. But it has been nowhere near universal, and that has created problematic barriers for students on campuses.
And so as part of that, thinking that a CRA would hinder a student from receiving off-campus or seeking off-campus assistance?
We think there are multiple things that pose challenges about the CRA proposal. And one of them is the challenges around holding privilege as a single human on campus. And another part of it is it's yet again another body that purports to hold the response within the walls of the campus. And there are mental health services, there are substance use services, there's a whole plethora, there's off-campus residence options and housing navigations that our centers provide, there's court advocacy, there's the connection to legal services, there's a broad range of community-based services that someone who connects with one of our centers has access to for free. Our services are free. Someone who maybe doesn't want to live on campus wants to then sort of live off campus. We have employees at our agencies who actually have relationships with landlords in the community. And again, the legal resources, I think, are huge. The students that we have worked with who have had the benefit of counsel by Pine Tree Legal Assistance to explore really a boatload of off-campus other options, and to navigate the on-campus, their rights on campus and the institution's responsibilities, has been at a whole different level than a student who does not have access to this legal counsel. And I know Melissa Martin could speak to it much better than I can. But I will say we have a range of concerns around not thinking the confidential resource advisor is the right solution at this point.
I'm gonna take some additional questions, but I would ask for, I see Ms. Representative Millet's hand is up, and as is Ms. James. Representative Millet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So pushing aside the hold privilege question, which I think I would look for Ms. Risler's assistance with that when we get to a different part of the conversation and understanding how other states have handled this issue that you have raised. So I'm going to just push that aside. I'm really struggling to understand the depth of opposition to creating yet one more individual who would be made available to a student who has experienced assault. I appreciate that there is a Title IX. I appreciate that there is a counseling service and mental health services and just health centers. And in addition to your wonderful organizations in our community, they all right now are in existence. And yet we are very cognizant that there are many young people who have not felt safe in receiving services for what happened to them. So why would we object, notwithstanding the hold privileges, in creating another position within an organization that perhaps a student or 10 students would feel safe approaching? Whereas in all the other areas that are already in existence, they don't.
I think one of our concerns is the fiscal note, and that the fiscal notes, that would be put on this bill to support these positions would prevent its successful implementation when there is so much good in this bill otherwise. I think there's also an aspect of questioning what's the best trauma-informed approach. You know, how many humans does a student have to tell their story to get to the level of services that might actually move them forward? You know, if you do have a student who's using the Title IX options, you have the CRA, the Title IX, and then outside resources as well. And at the core, we think the other elements of the bill will accomplish getting students to the full panoply of services in a way that makes grappling with the challenges of the CRA unnecessary.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just may follow up. I do appreciate the fiscal note issue, but that really is a legislative concern. And I think that there are individuals who would carefully follow, including the Senate president, follow the passage of the bill and would endeavor to make sure that if it was in jeopardy, we would make necessary changes to remove the fiscal note. But I think that that is a question for us as a as the legislator, I really would like to focus our conversations on policy objections, implementation objections. And so your issue raised around trauma-informed approach, I certainly respect, and I think that there's a way to address that. I think, what I'm going to leave it there. I'm now stating my own personal position, which I can do later. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, folks. We the committee is under some time constraints this morning or afternoon now. We do have another work session that we have some hired personnel to help us with. So I'm going to get, I see a hand up by Eli. I'm going to ask Representative Dodge if you can share your question, and then you may not get the answer today based on our time.
Do you wish for me to go before Eli?
No,
Okay.
Question out.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, for that acknowledgement. My question is there a possible solution to this in our first step being that the confidential resource advisor position be delegated to one of our agencies with whom we have memorandums of understanding, memoranda, whoops, plural Latin, so that we still have the CRA. It exists in the local organization, and that is for future discussion and as a possible compromise, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eli?
Senator Rafferty, given our time constraints, I just wanted to, for information, let you know that both of our interpreters are indeed in the attendees list at this point.
All right. And so, and Hillary?
Sure. I just also on that same note, just wanted to note that I think we are still waiting for Karen Hopkins from the Governor Baxter School. And she may not join us till closer to 12:40. So to the extent you want to continue this discussion until she is available, that would be an option. It's up to you as chair.
Thank you. What I think I'm going to do, honestly, we're not going to end this today. We're going to have to come back to it on Wednesday. So at this time, I'm going to table the work session and come back to it on Wednesday. And I'm going to give the committee a 10-minute break. And as our folks for the Baxter School, I think all parties will be available at 12:40, and I have 12:30 right now. Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with exactly what you're doing. I just want to make sure we follow the right process. Do you need a motion to table? I suspect you do, and if you do, I would so move that.
I appreciate you doing so.
And I would so second.
Thank you. And we don't have to vote on that. Correct, Hillary?
You do need to vote on that.
Thank you. I'm going to go by a share of hands of all committee members present. Please show your hands if you're in favor of tabling at this time. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of, so it's unanimous by all those in attendance. Folks, thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off. We'll see you on Wednesday. We start at 9:30, I believe. I want to confirm that before you go. And thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you
we're
so
going
much.
to take a 10-minute break, folks. I would suggest you mute your microphone and move away from the video. Shut your video down as well. Thank you. Good afternoon, Marissa. Thank you for being with us. I'm sorry for the delay. We had a prior work session and then we understood that someone we needed for this session was on a slight delay. Folks, if you're within earshot, if you could please kindly start working our way back. Thank you. Looks like we are back. That said, I'd rather not delay any longer if we can help it. So relative to LD 1632, I'd like to open that work session at this time, and I would ask that Ms. Risler, if you would be kind enough to go through your analysis, please.
Yes, I will start with my bill analysis. Before I do so, I just want to let everybody know I do have a tendency, as you all know, to sometimes speak very quickly. So if anybody needs me to slow down, please do not hesitate to let me know. That being said, I will open up my bill analysis for LD 1632, which is an act to update the laws regarding the Maine Educational Center for the Deaf of Hard of Hearing and the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf. This bill analysis is based on the revised proposed amendment, which was just sent to you. It is essentially doing the same thing that the earlier proposed amendment did, but cleans up a lot of the language. I think makes it a lot more straightforward. And I know the executive director of the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf and Maine Educational Staff for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Karen Hopkins, is here. She worked very closely with the Department of Education on many components of this, with a little input from me on some drafting suggestions, and they are both there to answer further questions on intent and how this would work in practice. But essentially, the proposed amendment would strike and replace the original draft and the original revision you saw. This amendment establishes the Maine Educational Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf as a deaf and hard of hearing service provider, referred to in this new chapter as the center. The center encompasses the Mackworth Island Preschool, located on Mackworth Island, as an integrated preschool program for children who are deaf or hard of hearing and typically developing children. Early intervention services that include deaf and hard of hearing related services delivered to children birth to under 3 years of age who are deaf and hard of hearing. And statewide education and family services that are provided to schools throughout the state by staff employed through the center, including but not limited to site-based programs, consultation, evaluation, and specially designed instruction. The amendment revises the definitions governing the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf to reflect this change from a school structure to a deaf and hard of hearing service provider. That includes including but not limited to updating the definition of center, of sending school, of statewide education and family services, and the Mackworth Island Preschool, and removing some of those definitions that are no longer needed, such as the center school, satellite programs, statewide resource center, and then also adding some new definitions to cover these new provisions, such as site-based programs, early intervention and family services program, as well as room and board, post-school, and 504 plan. It repeals the section of law that govern the center school programs operated by the school and satellite programs. And it amends the provision of law governing funding and tuition for the Mackworth Island preschool and site-based programs, including this distinction between out-of-state tuition and in-state tuition for site-based programs, as well as room and board. It also repeals the section of law governing student placement, state and federal educational service requirements, and technical assistance. But really, most of the section that's being repealed is actually being reallocated to the new sections that the bill puts in, section 7405-B through 7405-E as appropriate.
And can I have you, Hillary, if you wouldn't mind, on the numbers, just slow down a little bit. Numbers are hard for me to catch. Thank you.
Absolutely, my apologies. So each of these new sections will provide for the placement in that division of state and federal required educational services by the age range. So by Part C, which is the birth to under 3 years of age, versus the Part B, section 619, and then of course the Mackworth Island preschool. So this is sort of similar to some of the conversations that we had around the revisions to the CDS, not in terms of content, but in terms of making it clearer that each section is going to govern a specific age category. So specifically, section 7405-B would govern the provision of the early intervention services in the respective responsibilities of the state's intermediate educational unit and in the center in providing the services. Not dissimilar to, again, the CDS conversation, but this would amend and use that sort of generic language of the state's intermediate educational unit, which would ensure that should changes be made to CDS, there's not going to create a conflict, that this terminology would cover both the current CDS system as it exists, as well as that future system if the committee ultimately separately moves forward on that. Section 7405-C governs the Mackworth Island preschool and the state's intermediate educational unit and the center's respective responsibility in providing FAPE and specific services. Section 7405-D governs the statewide education and family services and the site-based programs and the respective responsibilities and services of the school administrative unit, the center, sending school. And section 7405-E governs the student placement at the Mackworth Island preschool and site-based programs beginning July 1, 2022. This proposed amendment also makes a number of corresponding changes throughout the rest of the chapter that governs the Governor Baxter School for the Deaf, including anywhere changing from school to center where necessary. It updates the powers and duties of the center's board, removes provisions related to certificates and grants of diplomas or any of those other duties that are specific to the center's previous establishment as a school. It also provides an individual memorandum of understanding may be established to further define enrollment criteria, clarifies student conduct, and provides that the center's board may create, maintain, and expand site-based programs for deaf and hard of hearing children and families to meet the needs of the deaf and hard of hearing children statewide. So I did provide a link to all the public hearing testimony, but I did not do a summary of it just because I didn't have quite enough time. But as I did mention, members of the department and Karen Hopkins from the Governor Baxter School are here to sort of answer some of those bigger questions about how this all works in practice as opposed to just being on paper.
Thank you very much, Hillary. Any questions at this time, folks? Relative to the analysis, the impacts? Why did our gallery seem to just, there we go. I lost the gallery view for some reason. Representative Millette has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a really big amendment with a lot of changes. I believe from the bill, would that be accurate, Ms. Risler?
That is accurate, especially from the original bill itself.
Yeah.
A lot of it is actually similar to the revised version that you saw at the public hearing in intent. But there was a lot of details that need to be clarified and separated and worked out that I think this draft is attempting to convey, specifically that division between sort of the big three components that the center would now encompass, which is the Mackworth Island preschool, the early intervention services, and the statewide education and family services that are provided throughout the state and site-based programs.
So it's your view that the bill as proposed shares the same intent as the amendment that's before us today?
I would say that the proposed amendment that was offered at the public hearing, with some differences, intent-wise is similar to this. There are some differences though, and there are some components that were in that draft that were removed from this. And I would have either Karen Hopkins or perhaps Megan Welter from the department help talk the committee through those specific components, because I was not part of those conversations.
Do you happen to remember if the testimony that was provided by the public was in recognition of the amendment that was being proposed then, or was it in response to the bill that was before us?
I think it was some of both. I think a lot of the testimony you heard at the public hearing was specific to the experience of those who receive a lot of these services, and was less specific to the bill itself.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, folks? In terms of some clarifications there, Hillary, you alluded to Ms. Hopkins and Ms. Welter.
Yes, and Representative Peirce is also here as well. The one correction regarding the public hearing is I do know that Dr. Alan Copa Lewis did testify on the bill as well, and he had some very specific draft related components to his testimony.
Okay, thank you. I think I just saw we have Representative Peirce. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you all?
Good, good. The question was just brought up. I'm not sure you heard it, like how does this amendment address, I guess, the issues that we heard at the public hearing?
So I think that Hillary is very accurate. Most of the public testimony were from people who were utilizing the services and had a positive relationship with the school, both on the island and across the state. I think the Mackworth or the Maine Center for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing has worked very hard on making sure that kids are met, if possible, in their communities, and if not, then we figure out a way to make that work for them. And then they run a wonderful preschool on the island. What came to light, I think, in the course of drafting all of this, and I appreciate the committee's patience to it because it has taken a number of different turns, was that the DOE became very involved after the second amendment was presented. There was a bill and then an amendment, and then now where we are. And Karen, Ms. Hopkins, the ED, can speak to this as well, but Erin Fraser and the DOE, in conjunction with her and her staff, and then keeping me in the loop, really wanted to make sure that this worked for kids with IEPs, that we were dealing with. This law was has been on the books a long time and needed some updating around federal regulations, et cetera. So where we are now is a joint venture with the DOE on this, and then also with the school. And I think if you ask Ms. Hopkins, she'll confirm that this has gotten to where they were hoping they would get. There's obviously changes here, but feeling like it's the right thing for the institution and for meeting the needs of kids across the state in a more effective and productive manner. So, I'm pleased with the work. It is a lot of it a little technical. I really appreciate Hillary working so hard on it with everybody involved. And I think it was a good collaboration between the school, the state, your committee, and now we're here today with the hope of moving it forward.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any additional questions to ask? Representative Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Hillary, would you say that this bill, as now presented to us in this amendment, would now parallel our discussion around CDS?
I would be hesitant to say parallel, and partly because I think, this is obviously very specific to a certain category of children that the Governor Baxter School serves. But also, I think in this case, there are a number of services at the Governor Baxter School, and they're going to correct me if I'm wrong, but there are a number of services that they're already providing in this manner, but that the statute hadn't been reflecting. And I think there was even, and this is sort of anecdotally, there was at times confusion over exactly which services, for example, the Governor Baxter School was responsible for providing, what the school administrative unit was responsible for providing. And I think the intent here is to provide that clarity, while at the same time making it clear that the school is not operating in a school the way it was established in statute at this point in time.
So the breakdown, so the statute prior said 0 to 5. Now it says 0 to 3 and under, and 3 to 22. So to me, that breakdown of age groups seems very similar to the discussion that we are having around CDS. And my concern is, or question is, do we need to make sure that the age groups that we may or may not change or support in the CDS bills need to mirror what we would do in this amendment?
So I certainly think that is a complication, especially when you're having these conversations in separate vehicles. The one thing the draft does do, to the extent, not for the ages specifically, but to the extent of who is providing the services, by using that generic term that hopefully eliminates, the state's intermediate educational unit would eliminate that particular conflict. But in terms of the ages, yes, I think that would be a complication and a potential conflict.
Thank you. Do we have any additional questions or concerns? Seeing none, Ms. Welter, did you want to offer any insight as to our discussion?
I would first invite, if it pleases the chair, Karen Hopkins is really the expert. I just was kind of along for the ride, and Karen and her team have been doing yeoman's work for a very long time, and this has been a bill that has been long in process. So I can certainly speak to a couple of questions that Representative Millette had, but I do want to make sure that Ms. Hopkins has an opportunity to weigh in if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
I'll allow her to do so, but we have to pull our trump card at this time, and Ms. Rizla had her hand up, so.
The only thing I wanted to just provide clarity on, and I need to go back and reread the draft to see what it does, but the one thing that the draft does is try to identify, for example, early intervention services by age range. And regardless of how the committee moves forward with CDS, That will not change because that's using the terminology of federal law. So your committee may need to look at who is providing that service, but to the extent that early intervention services or FAIF as appropriate would be provided, that wouldn't change. So I just wanted to provide that quick clarification.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Ms. Hopkins.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me back. And I was thankful that Hillary just said that because that's the same thing I was thinking. IDEA law separates into early intervention and 3 to 22 services. So regardless of what happens with the CDS bill and the work that you're doing on that, this legislation that you're looking at today really wouldn't impact that at all. It's more who is responsible. Is it CDS or whatever it's going to be called, or the public schools? Our role wouldn't change. We provide services to deaf and hard of hearing children. What we tried to do was separate out the difference in what happens in federal law for early intervention for babies and infants and toddlers and their families and children that are 3 to 21, 22, based on IDEA, the federal law. What happens to those children when they go to school? And the law says that happens at 3. So that's basically what we've done. Megan has been a tremendous help in clarifying. We've had several meetings with Aaron Frazier, with Megan, with Sarah Forster, the Attorney General, Roberta Lucas from CDS, and myself, and sending lots of drafts back and forth. The intent, as Hillary said, is exactly the same as what you heard public testimony on. What I heard from the families and the providers that you heard from that day was the desire to offer and ensure statewide equity for deaf and hard of hearing children, regardless if they live in Machias or Fort Kent or Portland. And that's been something that we've been striving to do. And what is in this legislation in front of you is happening for the most part, but it's not what the law says. The law said before that we should provide a school for the deaf, and maybe some satellite programs, which that wording was confusing, and then some consultation. So we are doing way more than that. We're doing so much more than that. And you heard from the families, they need it. The children need it. The public schools need it. They don't understand what to do with deaf and hard of hearing children. And our charge as a deaf education state agency is to do that. So I feel very comfortable saying to you that there's no major changes in the intent of this at all. Megan can talk specifically of the changes that were made, but basically this is saying that MECDHH, your state-funded deaf education agency, will serve children birth until 22, regardless of where they are, regardless of their needs. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have as you work through this.
Thank you very much for the help. Folks, any other clarifying questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Representative Millette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask for a corner caucus, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We 10 minutes. Folks, reminder to mute and shut down your video while you move. Thanks, everyone, for your patience. Coming out of the caucus, I guess I'll throw out there, one of the conversations we had was how this potentially might impact, if it does, how does it affect the funding piece for local communities? Ms. Hopkins, can you address that?
Sure. A couple of places, what we did was we looked at what made sense for the state to fund and what made sense for the LEA, the school districts, to fund. Currently, the state is funding tuition to our site-based programs. And most of the time, when a district sends a student, a child, to another school, the district pays because they have the child count funds. Currently, the Portland School District is getting the child count funds. So what we did in this was say the child count will stay where it should in the student's district, and that will be the money that will support paying tuition. Does that make sense? And then that's for the site-based programs, and for what we provide to students statewide, that's fully funded. The only thing that the towns would have to pay is interpreting services in their district. And they would transport their child because it's in district. We would provide all the specially designed instruction related to deaf and hard of hearing needs, speech therapy consultation, ASL specialist services, and there's a whole list of services that we would provide. The schools would basically pay for their regular education and interpreters if needed.
Thank you.
Your question?
Yeah, Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This may be apples and oranges, or maybe it's bananas and melons. I have a question about extracurricular participation and how that might be impacted, please. Thank you.
Sure. What we did with that's been causing some confusion because we're having more and more students in our site-based programs that want to do basketball or drama or art club, which is phenomenal. But the question was, who pays for that, as with everything else? So in this rewrite, what we did was we said, if it's on the child's IEP, for example, interpreting services is on the child's IEP, we would continue to pay for that because it's deaf related. If it's not on the child's IEP, for example, transportation like back and forth, we would not, because sometimes it's 8 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night to get these students back and forth to their practices, their basketball practice or what have you. So that seemed to make sense to go back to the districts for that. Having said that, we did have discussion with Department of Ed. If it's written on a student's plan as special transportation, which means oftentimes students with additional needs that need a harness or a special van, then that's written on the IEP. We would cover that as well because that's related to their IEP.
Is that any Representative Dodge?
A follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So is there a possibility that those specifics would reduce the opportunities for students in rural areas more than it might reduce the opportunities for students in an urban area, please?
Sure. So that's come up recently too, because all of a sudden we have children that are coming to the site-based program from an hour away. So they get up in the morning and they drive on our transportation to the school, and then most children go home. Some children are wanting to stay. So that's where this discussion came up. How are these children getting back home? And what do we do if they want to stay for a basketball practice? So some families are providing transportation. We're providing transportation. It's really been a lot of discussion with each specific child, with their district, with their family, with us trying to figure out the best way so that children can participate. This is one of the biggest reasons why we need more site-based programs, because these children are so far away from their homes. So if we can have more programs, they'll be closer to home. They could participate more readily in after-school programming.
Thank you.
Representative Millet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to be doubly sure that as the amendment is written, property taxes will not be required in any additional amounts to cover these programs and services.
I don't think that that would be impacted at all, because the child count for the students, which is now going to Portland, would stay in district. So those funds would help the districts pay tuition to the site-based program. For all other services, there's no cost anyway. And these schools have funds for special education. So they have the special ed funds already, and then they have the child count funds. So that together, I can't see how it would impact taxes at all. So we're actually providing way much more at no cost than we were before. We did a cost analysis showing what would it cost for a student to stay in district and receive these services, and a student to go to a site-based program. And it was cheaper to go to a site-based program if they had all the services that a lot of these children have: PT, OT, speech, behavioral support, interpreters. With us paying all of that, the cost that the district is paying is really nominal, as opposed to if they kept the student in district and they had to pay interpreting costs for that student and everything else.
Thank you. And I guess, OFPR will do its analysis, and we would see any sort of changes reflected in that. And if we do see something unexpected, we can always reconsider. So I think I'm good at this point. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Representative Salisbury.
When you're ready, Mr. Chair, I'll just make a motion.
I am at this time. Thank you.
Okay, great. I want to make a motion to ought to pass as amended LD 1632.
And I would second that, please, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
So I have a ought to pass by Representative Salisbury and seconded by Dodge. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask Eli if you would be kind enough, please, to call the roll.
On a motion of ought to pass as amended for LD 1632, Senator Rafferty.
Yes.
Senator Rafferty votes yes. Senator Daughtry. Senator Daughtry is absent. Senator Woodson.
Yes.
Senator Woodson votes yes. Representative Brennan. Representative Brennan is absent. Representative Crockett.
Yes.
Representative Crockett votes yes. Representative Dodge.
Yay.
Representative Dodge votes yay. Representative Lyman.
Yes.
Representative Lyman votes yes. Representative McCray.
Yes.
Representative McCray votes yes. Representative Millet.
Yes.
Representative Millet votes yes. Representative Roach.
Yes.
Representative Roach votes yes. Representative Salisbury.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Thank you. Representative Salisbury votes yes. Representative Sampson. Representative Sampson is absent. Representative Stearns.
Yes.
Representative Stearns votes yes. With 10 yes and 3 absent, the motion carries.
Thank you, Eli. Hillary.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the committee's permission because there is a lot of technical aspects of this amendment, should any questions come up as it goes through process through the revisor's office, that I would be able to share a draft with the department or with Karen Hopkins or the sponsor, Representative Peirce. Obviously, any substantive questions would need to be answered by this committee. And then, of course, any questions on the fiscal note, or depending on what that looks like, if that sparks a red flag for me that I know the committee would be interested in, we'll make sure that the committee has a chance to review that as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Representative Peirce, thank you very much for being with us today. Ms. Hopkins, Ms. Welter, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you.
You folks have a good afternoon.
You too.
So, yes, Hillary. Oh, all right. So just looking at the rest of our week, I know that I added on to Wednesday morning that we're going to continue with LD 1727. And that's the only additional change that I have. So Tuesday, the committee will not meet. We'll be back tomorrow. That should give us a day probably to get caught up on a lot of things. And Hillary might have time to breathe a little bit. Anything else, folks, before we go? Thank you all very much for your work today. You have a great, Eli.
I can, Representative Salisbury, I can take that vote at the end of this now, since you're here in person.
And Senator Woodson, and then Hillary.
Yeah, did you say we were not meeting tomorrow? Oh, we got, do we have session? We don't have session.
No, we don't have, I could be wrong. I have us off tomorrow.
We don't have
Okay.
any committee meetings scheduled tomorrow. For chairs and leads for scheduling purposes, it seems like it may make sense to wait until after we finish Wednesday's meeting, at which point I think we'll have a better sense of exactly how much work that is left. So if we could plan to meet for scheduling Wednesday afternoon, and we'll plan out any necessary meetings for the rest of the week and for the following week if necessary, and as permitted by the POs, if that makes sense for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
And Hillary, I'm blanking. Does anyone remember what day we're in session next week?
Next week, you're in session on Tuesday, the 22nd and the 24th.
Tuesday, Thursday.
Tuesday, Thursday.
Yeah. All right. Folks, again, thank you all for your work today. I appreciate everything you've done. And Hillary, we know you've been inundated, I'm sure, with a lot of things. So thanks for keeping us on track, and all that you've continued to do, both you and Eli. Representative Millette, if you would take a phone call from me in a moment, I'd appreciate that on a personal matter. Otherwise, we'll see you folks Wednesday. Have a good day.
Take care.
Okay, Eli, so that was the bill related to
The leasing of the Bonnie Eagle building. Yep. The votes as they were, we had 9 ought to pass as amended, and then the 4 were absent.
Okay, so I'll do ought to pass as amended.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You as well.